Quiet, numbskulls, I'm broadcasting.
Hello, you're listening to the podcast. So there I was. This is episode number 109. We're not ready, you idiot.
Yeah. And this is also the podcast Danger Close. Or Danger Close Enough.
It's Dan from Danger Close.
Dan.
What a great interview Dan was.
Absolutely.
He's our first. Yeah, say it.
Air traffic controller. You're clear to say it. So good stuff. This is kind of cool. What we're doing and what Dan is doing is this episode can be heard in our feed and it can be heard in his feed. Now, you go listen to Danger Close, you won't get this intro, but you will hear the main body of the show over on Dan's feed. So that was a lot of fun to do. It was kind of a podcast swap. And then we said, you know what, let's just do a show together.
It was a long night for us. I think it's going to pay off for our listeners.
So we've got 3.5 hours with Dan. This show is going to be 2 hours plus all of this crap. And the next week's show is going to be another hour and a half. So we sat with him for a long time. Really fun to talk to this gent and amazing stuff. And we'll get into that in just a minute. We got a 5-star review from our friends across the pond, Fig. He says, loving it.
Here, you're going to read it in English accent?
I could, here comes my Disney English accent. Loving it. Great tales. I picked up on this podcast after it was recommended by another podcaster. Downloaded it. I'm not going to do that anymore. Downloaded the first two to see how it went and have been on a bit of a binge. Now up to episode 30.
Right on.
Great stories, and the guys have a nice, easy style of interviewing. Thank you. So far, it's not advert heavy, which is nice, and it's U.S. centric, but it is what it is, and none the worse for it. Keep up the good work. And that's from Granda Nick in the United Kingdom. So
thank you, Granda Nick. Thank you for that. We appreciate your review.
Absolutely, we do.
Hey, and while we're talking about reviews, listen.
Go give us one.
Give us one, and if you can't give us a 5-star, give us some pointers as to what would make it a 5-star, because we're trainable, right?
Absolutely.
For crying out loud.
Yeah.
We're trainable.
Yeah. 5 stars always helps, though. We do appreciate it. Help us earn it. Here's the other thing that we know we want to have Dan back, and we talked a lot of air traffic control, but not air traffic control centric. If you've got questions of a real live air traffic control tower controller, he works in a major city. We'll just say it up front. He's in the San Francisco Tower.
Very busy.
Very busy. One of the more difficult airports in the country because they've got so many gosh darn runways and one controller to handle them all. So send us your ATC questions, and we'll be sure to get those to Dan when we get him back. So, hey, what else is there, Fig? Looks like someone else.
We got a new Patreon.
Someone else lacking judgment throwing money at us. Yeah.
Yes. God bless him. Mark Miller, call sign High Life.
High Life.
Thank you, Mark. We're humbled by your donation, and we're always surprised and humbled, and we appreciate all of our Patreons.
Deeply appreciate it. And I noted that Mark is paying in pounds. Therefore, he's likely British, unless he's using a VPN or something and converting his money over and back. But no, thank you very much, Mark. Appreciate it.
God bless you. High Life, Miller, High Life. I don't know if you. They probably don't get Miller beer in the
United Kingdom,
Great Britain.
Yeah.
So it's a brand of beer. It's a light lager.
It's the champagne of beers. Beer. Just ask them.
Thank you for your donation. We appreciate you.
And how about that Facebook group?
Holy shit. We broke 1,200 members and climbing on our Facebook page. So please keep sharing. And thank you to Bago, who manages our Facebook and administrators our Facebook page for us.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Bago. And please share it. Keep sharing, folks.
A lot of people coming in over there and doing a nice job of sending stories up on the Facebook page. And I'm hoping it's going to be a better source of guests for the show as we go forward. If you haven't been there in a while, Fig, go read that. There's some good stuff there.
I will.
Sponsor this week is FTIratings.com. Get your ATP in a nice, cool, indoor air-conditioned simulator where you don't risk going into a flat spin, doing a mid-control airspeed, single engine.
Flying a light twin made in the 50s.
Smells
held
like
together
socks.
by baling wire. Smells like socks and mold and 100 lowlands.
Yeah. Oh,
vibrating
man.
the shit out of you, scaring you.
Right. Oh, man.
Because that's what I did my ATP in, and it was not fun.
Right. And if you forget to lower the gear, you get to walk away from it.
That's right.
You may not walk away with your ATP, but you walk away from it. No, in all seriousness,
you walk away.
Yeah, these guys, they're not going to let you fail your ATP. They're going to take you through basically your check ride and get you up to speed so that when you go in with the examiner, you've done it, and it's going to be smooth and simple. Mention that you heard it here, and you get $100 off from your bill at the end, and you can use your veterans benefits. And
that's what these guys do. They're pros at it.
That's all they
do. This is what they do every day.
Yep.
So check them out.
Decades of experience. We'll talk more about that in the show. So our first air traffic controller, how do you learn to do that?
Well, he's a fellow brethren of the USMC.
That's right.
And that comes with some great stories as well.
Absolutely. Some great boot camp stories. At the beginning, yeah. Dancing around with his rubber rifle and trying not to let his towel fall off. And
not to be a spoiler, but just the path to the Marine Corps was a good story.
It was.
Right?
Yeah.
And I'm not going to ruin it. But, he had a short but distinguished Marine Corps career before transitioning into the civilian world. And there's several stories that are going to, it's and there's a recording.
Yeah.
That's
at the end of this week's episode.
Okay. I'm not going to ruin it then.
I'm not going to ruin it either, except if anybody's seen Full Metal Jacket and knows who Arlie Ermy is, the drill instructor. This recording almost puts that to shame. It was a real live.
Oh, it was the real deal.
Oh, yeah. We can't say anymore except it's the end of this show and you are going to howl. It's not for tender ears.
No, you're probably going to need to rewind it a few times because it goes fast and he's a fast talker. And boy, there's some staccato gems.
Boom, 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 boom. It's like, did he say all that?
There's layers of absolute gems laid on this poor soul in seconds.
Yep. And I will say that this Marine did manage to use a verb, an adjective, a noun, all in one word in about 4 seconds.
Yeah.
All right. Hey, you know what? I think let's get out of the way and let's hear him do it.
Let's go. Let's get out of the way.
All right. Here comes Dan from Danger Close.
Don't sit on the microphone transmit switch.
Don't do it. Because we're not ready, you idiot.
This here is a true story about crossing the pond at night in the world's smallest cockpit on the tanker through the weather. Oh, and to the tanker crew who did that, thanks a lot. We really appreciated that. I'm just kidding. No, I'm not. Well, there I was, crossing the pond, and you could see that I wasn't exactly fun.
So there I was, San Francisco Tower. This is maybe 5 years ago. Let's call it, definitely pre-COVID. Let's call it 2018 or so. And I'm working local control, which is the position where you're in charge of the runways and any transitioning aircraft, the planes that are moving fast, let's say. And I've got an assistant sitting right next to me, which is standard operation. He's just listening, make sure I don't screw anything up. So it's not crazy, but relatively busy. I got an Alaska loaded onto a right, going to depart westbound towards the ocean. And I got a helicopter that's doing a standard transition following Highway 101, which goes around the airport to the west. And, we're Class Bravo airspace. We're required to separate these helicopters from the airliners. So I tell them about the traffic. I tell them to hold and wait, etc. And I'm departing north, right? We got 2 northbound runways and 2 westbound runways that we're landing on. And so I depart north. I got a pair, turn a left, turn a right, and I start calling the traffic to the helicopter. So I say, traffic's in Alaska, 737, on runway 28 right, in position, going to depart straight westbound. Caution, turbulence, report that traffic in sight. They go, yeah, we got the traffic airborne to the north. I go, it's like a Virgin America Airbus. I said, no, ma'am, that is not the traffic. Traffic is in position on the runway, going to depart west. Report that traffic in sight. I need you to hold, wait for the aircraft to pass, then pass behind them, continue transition. Oh, okay, we got the traffic in sight. All right. I launch Alaska, to right, clear for takeoff, wind 2807. Go do some other things, right? There's always something to do. I turn around, I ship the departures to the north, I'm loading the runways, I'm doing this, doing that. And I look to my left, and I'm seeing the helicopter starting to move on the radar screen, but anticipated separation, right? There's nothing wrong with that. They're gauging their speed and planning on passing behind the Alaska. So I see that out of the corner of my eye, nothing unusual. Turn around again, and then another 10 seconds go by. All of a sudden, conflict alerts going off on the radar. My assistant looks out the window. I look out the window, and we see the helicopter just making a beeline for the departure end of 28 with Alaska just about to get airborne.
No.
And my whole life flashed in front of my eyes because, again, this is Class Bravo airspace. So while the GAs do some dumb stuff from time to time, you know, we're calling the traffic. They're aware of it. It's a busy airport. They know they need to avoid these airliners. But clearly, she had made a mistake a second time and was looking at some other traffic. I don't know what, but it wasn't that one. So I'm looking out the window, and I got the helicopter at 800 feet northbound. The Alaska's just getting airborne, climbing towards them. And I know I only have about 3 seconds to make a call here. I'm not going to have time to make a second call. If I'm going to avoid a midair collision, I only have those 3 seconds. And because to my fault, I had not made a traffic call to Alaska before I departed them because I did not think this helicopter was going to be a factor. I decide to tell the Alaska pilot about this. And so I say, traffic's a helicopter off your left, supposed to be passing behind you. And right as I said that, this helicopter, which must have had a right cockpit window full of 737, saw him, dipped down, and flew right below them. The Alaska pilot never diverged course from their SID, and they just said, yeah, we see him there. Looks like they're passing below us. And then I shipped him to departure.
Holy
but I had to change my pants that day. Eventually, the FAA investigates, and they come back and they say, yeah, they had visual separation. Perfectly clean operation. It's on the pilot. Not your fault. And I was like,
What?
Okay.
I'll take it.
Oh, jeez.
Better be lucky than good, I suppose.
That, my friends, is how all scary air traffic control aviation stories start. This is Fig coming to you from, Kearney, Missouri, outside Kansas City. Where's my co-host?
Nice. Yeah, repeat here. I'm home in New Hampshire tonight for a few more days where I got to go off to training. But, oh, my God, that's terrifying. And as Sticks pointed out in the background, can never trust them helo bubs, man. They're screwing everything up when the world is going good. You know, holy smokes, that's terrifying. That, my friends, is none other than Dan from the Danger Close podcast. Former Marine, Semper Fi. Dan, welcome aboard. We got an email from Sadie over at backbeatmedia.com a couple, 3 months back about doing a pod swap. You've heard us do podcast swaps before, mention other shows. In return, they mention us. And Dan said, I'd like to talk to these guys before I do a pod swap. And it all devolved, as you'll about to find out, into we're going to do a joint show tonight. So he's going to publish this in his feed. We're going to publish it in ours. And this is going to be outstanding. This is a fine Marine coming with us tonight. And we're going to circle back on that. Absolutely. But Dan, welcome to our show. I'm going to welcome us to your show. This is exciting to do. Thanks so much for doing a joint
thanks,
with us.
Marine.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. I've been excited about this all week. I wore my finest skivvy shirt for you guys.
Nice.
I don't have those fancy aviator polos. So
Right.
I found the most Marine Corps thing in my closet that I could find.
Dan, we know where we can get you one, brother. We know where we can get
We'll
you
get you one, indeed. Yeah.
And I do have a little Marine Corps koozie. So
Nice.
I'm Marine Corps up for you guys.
Very
Nice.
cool. Yeah. Good to see a regulation olive drab green t-shirt. T-shirt. Oh, that's fantastic.
And,
well, talk up your show a little bit. Intro your show because we've introed ours.
Sure. Yeah. I haven't decided yet how I'm going to edit it or do it in my show. This is our first time doing this. I normally have two great co-hosts, Katie and Liam, who do our show with us. But because they weren't military and it was going to be just, too many chiefs, I figured this would be the best way to do this. So, our show's called Danger Close, a war film podcast. And we essentially, it's usually a 3-person show. Sometimes we do have a special guest if we have someone with expertise in the subject. And we have a whole team of people that do research for us. It's basically, long story short, this famous war film podcast called Friendly Fire, which is still out there and you can listen to, and I highly recommend. It was also a great show, just abruptly ended. And some of us in that community of listeners, after about a month, we were like, hey, you know what? I was like, I have podcasting experience. Yeah, I got the equipment. They didn't have a veteran, so I knew that was something I could add to the show. And so I kind of just made a call out into the void, into the Facebook group for that podcast. Says, hey, if I can find 2 other hosts and we have good chemistry, I think we can do something, like this, but make it our own. So I found 2 great hosts with theater, acting, and film critic background. And then I do kind of the military history and that kind of stuff. And they bring in the comedy and some of the writing. And, it's mostly unscripted. We have a few scripted segments, but we went from initial concept back in 2021 to finished show. We did our first episode on Full Metal Jacket 2 weeks later, fully edited and everything. And I have been running after that cart and playing catch up ever since because that's as you know, podcasts are a lot of work, and I was kind of just flying and
this is work.
Learning.
Yeah,
exactly.
Takes a few minutes a week to say the least, but
And I always wanted to incorporate veteran interviews into the show when I could, which I have done a few with fellow Marines and infantry and aviation, and so having an opportunity to talk to you guys, I was like, well, bring them on. Anytime I could talk to veterans, I'm always happy to do that. I think it's important to get people's experiences down and recorded, especially some of the older folks coming out of the Vietnam era that are fading. Some of them just never tell their story, right? Their families don't know about it. So that was kind of the impetus behind the idea.
Yeah.
And we've been doing it for 3 years. I finally met them in person for the first time in Pittsburgh. I'm getting married next month. And so I did my bachelor party in Pittsburgh and went and met up with them. They're in Minneapolis and Pittsburgh. And so we got to hang out for the first time in person. And it's been a really amazing experience. And we met all kinds of great people. We have people doing our research. One's an infantry captain in the Army. He did stuff like, We Were Soldiers and other films. He breaks down the tactics and stuff like that. If I had to do all the research as well, it would just be an impossible workload. Plus, I'm not an expert of everything, right? I'm just in general know about the military and know a bit about the Marine Corps. So when it comes to something like Full Metal Jacket that depicts Marine Corps boot camp, well, then I have some expertise because I went through it, right? But anything else, I kind of defer to the experts and try and get someone on the show that knows what they're talking about.
Right. And you publish every 2 weeks?
We did for the first 2 years of the show. We've been slowing down a little bit now as life has been catching up, at least once a month.
Okay.
So right now we're kind of doing one regular war film show per month. And then on our Patreon, which is called Danger Close Enough, we do kind of tangentially war related films. Terminator 1 and 2 was kind of war on robots. And we extend the definition we stretch it as far as we possibly can there to be able to include some comedy and some science fiction and stuff for the people who really like our film discussion and want to do that extra. But, our tagline is, war is hell. People make films about it and we love to talk about them. And so you're joining, a Marine, a film critic, and a theater director. And we kind of have that 3-legged stool to bring in our different expertise to discuss the history behind the actual events, the production of the film, and then our personal opinions on what we liked, what we didn't like, and et cetera. So it's been a really great time, and I'm really honored to be able to do it.
Nice. No, I'm going to go on record and publicly volunteer one of our guests, and hopefully you can hook up with him. We had a Marine on, or I'm sorry, he was a sailor, but gent by the name of call sign Intake, Scott Carthick. Blue Angel, and flew in Top Gun 2 Maverick. Flew the F-14.
Oh, nice.
So I bet we can put you guys together and You may want to chat about how they put that movie together.
Absolutely. We haven't covered it yet, so that'd be a good one.
That would be fun. And he's got a great book out there called Full Throttle. So, well, how'd you wind up in the Marine Corps?
Good question. I think my dad was always an aviation nerd ever since I was little. He was, his eyesight was bad, so he never flew. But he got me interested in it ever since I was little. So I think initially I had an idea of going down the route that you guys successfully went down. And, as a kid thinking about being a fighter pilot was a great idea. Of course, unbeknownst to me, that requires a little bit of discipline and actually making it through university and stuff like that. And I was not in that place when I was 19 years old, a little too undisciplined and not ready to do kind of the hard work, especially, you get me into something technical and something that I care about, and I'm very dedicated and, I'm smart enough to be able to pull it off. But you get me into the general ed stuff, especially at that age. I was too restless and just too young to be there, really. So I got my act together a little late in high school and decided I would try and go to the Naval Academy. So I started taking AP courses and, clubs and sports and wrestling, swimming, and all the stuff that you need to be doing to be competitive for that. But I started that like my sophomore year, so a little behind the power curve. So I got a congressional nomination, but did not get into the Naval Academy. And my next best bet was, all right, go to college, walk on an ROTC program, there's several different ways, as all of you know, in the military to get your degree. And so I went to UC Davis for a year. Their ROTC program was at Berkeley. And they did Stanford, Cal Maritime, UC Davis, and Berkeley. It was kind of all the satellites went there. Yeah. And let me tell you, it's an interesting experience PTing with a Marine gunny running us through the streets of Berkeley on university and actually be getting called a baby killer when you're 18, nice. 19. You're still a baby yourself. And I was like, this is a surreal experience.
That's nice.
Not yet.
Yeah, that's where that's where I kind of met my first Marines. The XO was an artillery officer, real hard ass, high and tight all the way. And the gunny ran a lot of the courses and the PT for the Marines, rifle drill, stuff like that. So nice. I immediately was interested in, initially was going the Navy route and then kind of made an abrupt 90-degree turn and went directly to Marine option because it just seemed cooler. They seemed tougher. They seemed like extreme in a good way, Yeah. And when you're young and impressionable, that's how meeting your first Marines tends to be. So,
how'd you wind up as a air traffic controller though instead of a grunt, man? Hardcore. High and tight.
He scored too high on the ASVAB.
I think my GT score was too high. That's probably what happened. I mean, I have to give credit to my dad for that one. So, for backtracking for a second to me leaving college, if I was making a movie of my life, this would be like a 5-second scene, but I would definitely put it in there. So I'm screwing around, not getting good grades, enjoying ROTC, but not doing the work that's required to actually make it in college. And I speak Italian. I was born in Italy, so I'm pretty good with Latin languages. I took French in high school, and I took a French class, and you had to start at 101. But I was like, I need to be in 102, 103, whatever. So I was not going to class and just taking the test and acing the test because I'm like, yeah, it's basic grammar. Like I have this stuff down. And a month into the course, I was getting an F. And I was like, why am I getting an F? And I realized in the syllabus there was an attendance requirement, and I'd missed the whole maximum 13 classes you could miss or whatever. So I walk into this French teacher's office hours, this professor, and she's got a messy desk with papers all over the place, and I walk in and I'm like, hey, I'm sorry. I didn't realize there was, all my tests are 100%, whatever. If I fail this class, I'm going to have to drop out of college and join the Marines, like that, literally. Yeah. And, this lady never even looked up from her desk. She was just shuffling her papers and she went, the military will be good for you. And man, was she right. In the moment. She really delivered that line. So that line and that French teacher kind of set me in the direction that I ended up going. Wow. And to answer your question, in the recruiter's office, I was, in shape, swimming twice a day. I was like, Navy SEALs and recon and go teams or fast team. And so I wanted to go in the infantry, and my dad smartly was there with me, and he kind of gave me a tap in the back of the head. He said, do something smart that when you get out, you can get a job, not, what are you going to do if you go in the infantry? And so I signed up for air crew. I wanted to be on a Huey, either manning a machine gun or being part of the crew or on a C-130, whatever, wanted to fly. I wanted to get some. And
you just don't lead them quite as much.
Not as much.
Yeah. Unbeknownst to me, kind of classic recruiters sort of quote unquote lying to you, right? He's like, oh yeah, well, we sign you up for this open aviation program. And then if you do well in your initial schooling, then you can pick whatever job you want. And I was like, sounds great, So it was a program that had, meteorology, UAVs, air traffic, air crew, and something else. Unbeknownst to me, because I had hit the minimum GT score that they needed for controllers, and not everybody gets that specific part of the ASVAB high enough, of course, recruiters are trying to fill a quota, right? Yeah. So if you look back at my paperwork, I had 7251 in my contract from the very beginning, but no one ever pointed that out to me. So
those sneaky bastards.
Fast forwarding to getting out of combat training, MCT, which is the classic moment, like in Full Metal Jacket, where the gunny's reading everyone's MOS. Literally, it was like that. At the end of MCT, he's reading a paper, and he goes, Toledo, air traffic control. And I raised my hand in the back. I'm like, hey, what the fuck is air traffic control? And no, I'm supposed to be air crew. And he's like, nope, says right here, air traffic control. You're going to Pensacola. And I was like, I don't know what the hell that is. And so the rest is history. Went to Pensacola, realized that it was actually a great job. And, I love the training and I love doing it. And I got to give it up to a little bit of dumb luck, a lot of failing up, and my dad for pushing me in the
better
right
to be lucky than good.
Always. Okay, Dan, what year was that?
I went to boot camp beginning of 2003. It was January 2003. So I was in college for 9/11. It was my freshman year. I remember getting woken up in the dorms and seeing the attack and everything. And I was already on a military track, so that didn't really make me, quit college immediately and join the military, because I knew I was kind of already going to do it. But within just a little, 2001? So a little bit over a year and a half, I was getting out of boot camp.
All right, so boot camp. The arch, there it is. Yeah. So you were, hold on.
He's a Hollywood Marine, though, I bet.
Oh, Hollywood. Yeah, okay.
Definitely.
What's your best boot camp story, memory? I mean, we all have them.
First day?
Years.
What the hell did I do?
Yeah, definitely you get the yellow footprints feeling of what was I thinking. I mean, that's nothing new. That's there. I have to say, and I could talk forever, so I took some notes and wanted to make sure I just highlighted the best stories for you. So I'm in boot camp, and I start off, and I'm squad leader. Then our guide, who's a fantastic guy, got injured. He had some kind of leg issue, got remanded to some remedial platoon. And I was the only dumbass who was really good at drill, because I'm like, my brain is anal and set up black and white like that. So you need me to make a 90-degree turn and hold the guide on parallel to the deck. I could do that. And so, not through pure leadership, but just because I was the only guy who could handle the drill a month into boot camp, I got made, the guide, and then later was the honor grad. But my dirty little secret that was well known to my platoon is they were like, that guy's not the best leader in the platoon. He just knows how to drill, and nobody else was going to do that job. So
there you go. And he just slid in there. He was the honor grad.
Exactly.
I caught that too.
Yeah,
fucking slacker.
So, right?
Come on, Dan.
Got the free dress blues. But so earlier on in boot camp, I think I'm still a squad leader at this point. And so, you get tasked little things here and there. You're, helping the drill instructors, being assigned things, given small leadership roles. So we were going out for a run or something. And I'm in charge of my squad, and I'm literally going down the line with sunscreen, giving everyone a little dab of sunscreen in their hand as I go down the line. So squirt, squirt, squirt. I get to this recruit who was very, very native looking Mexican, very, very dark guy. I've spoken to him actually recently, since I can't remember his name right now. But I look very pale in the wintertime, but my dad's side is Sicilian, so we all get very dark, and we've got a lot of mixed blood and definitely tan in the summertime. And I thought nothing of it, but my reaction, so he asked me for more. I gave him the standard squirt, and he's like, could I have some more? And I kind of said, you don't need more. You're fine, right? what do you need more for?
You're brown. You're already brown, dude. You're not going to.
Yeah, like it had nothing to do with race or anything like that. Plus, it's just something that's coming out in the moment. But I would have said the same thing to myself, right? It's like, I don't need more than that. Yeah. And I could tell very clearly from the look I got back from him that he did not take it well and that he took it as some kind of slur or something. But, again, your drill instructors are nipping at your heels. People are throwing shit. You don't have time to linger on stuff like that. So I just moved down the line and moved on. Fast forward to the end of the day, we're in the barracks, and this is the point in boot camp where you have like a slightly more freedom. So maybe you get like 40 minutes a night to like take a shower, read the paper, do whatever. Like you're on your own for 40 minutes.
Leisure times.
Yeah. So I'm in my shower.
Look into the senior drill instructor's office as you come out of the shower.
No, do not.
So I'm in my flip flops. I'm on a rain tree. I'm showering, and I hear the senior go, "Group for Lito," and everybody freezes. "Group for Lito, aye, sir," blah, blah, blah. The screaming, the yelling and all that. I respond, "Aye, aye, sir." So I'm like, I throw my towel on and I'm slipping, sliding across the, all wet and everything. I get to the duty hut. I give the 3 taps. "Group for Lito, point is ordered, sir. Get the fuck in here." I'm like, all right. So I walk in there. I'm like, "Yes, sir." He goes, and 2 of my drill instructors were, Mexican background. I think my senior was from like classic, like East LA guy, probably grew up in like rough streets, kind of that classic.
Man, I'm from East LA.
Yeah. And he goes, "So, Ferlito, I heard you don't like Mexicans." And I was like,
shit.
and I don't even know if I'm supposed to say yes or no to the question. Like, I don't really, grammatically, I'm just kind of like, "No, sir," but I don't even know what I'm saying at this point. He goes, "Yeah, recruit so-and-so came up to me and said, blah, blah, blah. You called him a darky," or whatever he said, So next thing I know, I've got the rubber M16. I'm in my towel doing star jumps and like left and, doing all this, trying to get the towel to not fall off me. He's laying into me. Right. And he goes, "Wait till Staff Sergeant Urquidez comes back tomorrow. He is going to rip you a new one." And, boot camp hierarchy, you've got your senior drill instructor, who's most experienced guy. He's supposed to be the father figure. Your junior drill instructor, this guy was former infantry, white guy, real tough. And then the 2 bottom ones, the very bottom guy's a bulldog, just running around sweating his ass off, yelling at everybody, that kind of thing. The guy right above him, this guy we're talking about, was also real dark, native looking Mexican, like a lot of native Central American blood, and the meanest motherfucker I ever laid eyes on. And I sent you guys a picture comparison because if you've seen Last of the Mohicans, the Michael Mann movie from the 90s, he looks just like Magara.
Oh, dude. Yes.
The main bad guy. And he was terrifying. I mean, he hated me already, hated everybody. Like, if he had cut my heart out of my chest and ate it in front of the platoon, I would not have been surprised. So this is the guy that I now had to go to bed and wait till the morning for him to come and, kill me the next day.
Yep.
So the next day, they get me on the quarterdeck again. We're waiting for this guy to show up. In the meantime, they take a pillowcase, cut 2 eye holes out of it, put it over my head, and then they're like, "Oh, you like being in the KKK for a little?" So I'm doing jumping jacks with the with the pillowcase over my head. Then Urquidez comes in, and he is just going to town on me. And he was the kind of drill instructor he had like a faucet nozzle right here. He could just turn on the spit whenever he wanted to, just in yelling. And it was stinky. And he would just be 2 inches from your face, just screaming at you, just spitting nasty, disgusting spittle in your face. So that was my day. I got my ass handed to me every hour of that day. And, eventually it faded away. Later on, I got a chance to talk to, the recruit who I offended in the first place, and walked up to him and I said, "Hey man, I'm really sorry that happened. I didn't mean anything personal by it. I'm not racist, anything like that." He goes, "Yeah, man, I emigrated from Mexico into Texas, and so I've dealt with a lot of bullshit, and it was a sore spot for me." And I was like, "I totally get it. I came from Italy in 6th grade, so like not exactly the same thing, but I went through a lot of bullshit too." So, and we became good friends after that. So
that's funny.
Yeah.
Damn.
Dude, you couldn't come to me first?
Yeah, I mean, I said that, but it was water under the bridge at that point. Plus, if you're in boot camp looking at everyone getting killed and in your mind going, "Ha ha," like not happening to, like, it's going to happen to you at some point. So it was just my turn.
Yeah, it's always funnier when it's happening to somebody else, though.
Yes, it is.
Holy shit.
Wow, that was a good story.
That is outstanding. Oh.
So your A school, technical school, was in Pensacola. That's a horrible place to have to go to school.
Right. I mean, it used to be in Millington, Tennessee, right?
Hey,
So
I'm sorry. Let me interrupt ever so briefly. I want to back up just a little bit. So a lot of us know what a guide and a guide-on is, but if you could chat about what that is for those that have never served any time in the military and don't know about drill and all that, would you explain the guide and the guide-on?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, if you look at pictures of platoons at boot camp, you will see, so that 2125 that you see there, so the flag itself is called a guide-on.
Picture. Yep.
And the guy carrying, so it's a 7 foot long pole with a small 2x1 triangular flag on it. It's usually crimson and gold, right? Marine Corps colors. And it has your platoon number on it. Which I'll be damned if I can remember mine right now, but we were a hotel company. And the guide serves a dual purpose. You are leading the platoon in drill, so you're at the front of the platoon. The guide on is also, it's different from a rifle, but you do similar things when you're saluting and you're at port arms and parade rest, etc. There's a whole process. There's a guide on manual, and it's different from anything else that the other recruits have to do. And again, you lead the platoon from the front, but it's also a leadership role. So when you're not marching and you're actually in the squad bay, as the drill instructors start to release you more to your own reconnaissance during the day, if anyone's going to be in charge, it's you, right? For example, one time we were taking a head break where it's like, all right, everyone freeze, stop, go ahead, 3, 2, 1, blah, blah, and everyone's running like crazy going to the head. And then everyone was done, and the drill instructors, like, they forgot about us, right? Like, they got busy in the duty hut doing something, and we're just all sitting there like assholes in the bathroom in the head. And I'm like, all right, it's been 4 minutes. I'm pretty sure we're supposed to be somewhere by now, right? So I'm like, perfect opportunity, leadership opportunity, right? I got to take some initiative here. I'm like going through the manual in my head. I'm like, I'm going to get the recruits all lined up online at attention. We'll be all cleaned up and ready to go for whatever the next evolution is. So I call the command to get back online, right? Which I don't even remember what it is at this point. So everyone starts streaming out of the head, running towards barracks. The junior drill instructor with polished black boots, right? Former infantry guy, walks out. He goes, 0. Everyone freezes, right? The entire platoon stops. He goes, who the fuck put you back? Get the fuck back in my head, right? Everyone runs back to the head, and I'm like, man, no matter what I do here, I'm wrong.
Damned if you do, damned if you don't.
He goes, guide, get the fuck it. So, pulls me into the office, right? And comes up close. He goes, you don't fucking ever tell my platoon what to do, this and that. And he got me in a headlock, and then he leg swept me and swept me off my feet and to like 2 inches from the ground. And it was a peek behind the scenes because it made me realize that I was like, oh, he's trying to intimidate me, but like he can't actually hurt me. So he gave me a full on leg sweep, got me to the ground, and then, had his face 2 inches from mine. And he's like, you fucking ever do that again? You understand me? Blah, blah, blah. And I was like, sir, aye, sir, and then he released me. We go back to the head. He does his thing. But, so you take on a light leadership role, but you got to be careful how much of the authority you take. It's a very compromised position.
Well, like you said though, if you hadn't done anything, what the hell's the matter with you? Why'd you leave him in there?
It was a
probably would have gotten
no-win
killed for that
situation.
anyways.
Yeah.
Hey, there was a A or a B choice that the drill instructor had. It was going to be one or the other, and Dan picked A, so he goes, "Okay, script A."
Should have been B.
Exactly. So let me ask you guys, because I'm a little bit familiar with how much Marine Corps officers get to interact with Marine Corps enlisted drill instructors. Because in boot camp, we all have the classic, just like Lee Ermey in Full Metal Jacket. It's still very much like that. But I'm pretty sure at OCS you have them, and at flight school you have them as well. Is that right? Or
not at flight school. No.
Okay.
Yeah, just OCS.
Yeah.
Okay. So the experienced drill instructors, I think, once they've done enlisted boot camp, can then put in to go to OCS and go essentially do the same thing to
same thing as First Sergeant Crouch talked about on our show several weeks back, a couple months back, was the what do you call it? The web belt. The web belt guys were pure evil. And the guy with the
sergeant instructors.
Yeah, the sergeant's instructor.
Yeah.
They were
the black
evil. And
the black belt guys were the senior drill
the senior drill
instructors, which was
Father
the
figure
calm,
and all that.
The big brother figure. If he was screaming, there was something really wrong.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Exactly.
But the only difference I would say, the biggest difference I would say, and I've confirmed this with several people having not done prior enlisted, was the trick to boot camp was getting out of the Marine Corps. The trick to OCS or PLC was staying in the Marine Corps. And the classic example was at juniors. They told us we're short of bread one night. They're going in. Everybody gets one slice of bread. One candidate was hungry. He grabbed 2 slices of bread. He sat down. He ate them. Get back outside. And, of course, they jumped his shit about having 2 slices of bread when he was told he could only have one. And he lied about it. We never saw him again.
Damn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Boom.
Integrity foul.
Yep.
Yeah. The we had some enlisted guys in my platoon that were going through to get their commission, and so they were the ones that were giving us all the gouge. Hey, this is how you fold your shit. This is this, that, and the other, because we didn't know shit.
Here's how to spit shine your boots. It's not as easy as it looks.
And so one day, towards the end, I said, so what how's this compared to boot camp? And basically he says, well, here's the deal, man. In boot camp, you can't quit. They got you. Here, you can quit. So this was fucking worse. He says, because they tried to get you to quit to see if you really, really want to be there. And that's how I kind of rectified the whole difference in my mind. And I was on the shit list for the first 8 weeks of my sergeant instructor. So I definitely wanted to be there.
Right. Yeah. A quick one that I don't think I've told on the show before. So I went through two sessions. I went PLC junior and senior. So you go 6 weeks one summer between your freshman and sophomore year, and then another summer between your junior and senior year, and then your commission when you graduate. So I go back for seniors, which was about exponentially harder than juniors. I had some fun at juniors. It wasn't easy, wasn't pleasant, but there was some fun. There was about much fun at seniors. It was it sucked from day one. To get off the bus, and 54 hours later, we finally hit the rack for the first time. It was a gut check. So Sunday afternoon, we get this is third day in. Sunday afternoon, they finally gave us a little bit of downtime, and we're supposed to be polishing our brass and our boots and all that shit. And I'm on my little camp stool, and I've got my foot locker out, and I just laid back for a couple minutes. I go, I just need 5 minutes. And the next thing I know, this explosion goes off, and it was my helmet hitting my aluminum or steel wall locker. And I go, what the fuck? And I'm about 4 inches from my DI's nose, and I go, oh, get down of my... And they PT'd the shit out of me for the next 2 hours.
It's amazing, right? I mean, I've listened to some of your episodes where people have referenced this kind of mystical thing that Marine Corps drill instructors have that it's part theatrics and part their actual ability, but they make themselves seem superhuman and like they can see and hear things that would just not be normal. I mean, I had those incidents where we're online in the barracks, and I'm, diagonally across a standard barracks of, 50 racks or whatever. It's got to be 30 plus yards. And I remember, one of my drill instructors laying into somebody and saying some hilarious shit, because they're comedians too. It's they get professional training.
Stand-up comedians got nothing on these guys.
Yeah, and I let out just ever the slightest giggle, from across the room.
Dumbass. And
it wasn't like half a second before the DI had made it across 30 yards, had bowled me over my footlocker, and was like, what the fuck is so funny? Like, in my face. And literally, I mean, if I replayed it in my mind, I'm like, he moved at the speed of light. I have no idea how he got to me.
How did he hear that? Right?
It's crazy.
Yeah. How did he hear it? And how did he move so fast? But those guys are superhuman in so many ways. But I also found them to be, and you probably found this too, they don't want you to fail. They want you to succeed. So
Right.
They screw with you to try and get you to quit, but they also want you to succeed and pass a lot of good knowledge on. So,
yeah, I mean, they make Marines. They know how to do it. It's a tried and true thing that they've been doing for many, many decades, and the program works.
Yeah, it absolutely does. Oh man, my rack committed suicide due to its lackluster appearance. A twin bed can go through a standard window with enough force, according to Sticks. So yeah, he did a service academy thing. So same thing there. And then let me relay one real quickly. This was First Sergeant Crouch, and one of the pictures he sent us, we didn't tell this on the show or the extra.
Oh my gosh.
But this is one of the funniest ones. Yeah. So he's one of the pictures he sent is Francis learns a lesson. I'm looking at it and I go, what the hell is that? Are those gumballs all over the deck? Because it's just enough blurry. And he's standing there with his campaign cover on and his arms folded. And he's kind of cross-eyed. And actually, his arms aren't folded. He's breaking something open in his hands. And he said, yeah, Francis. Oh, and Francis, by the way, is standing there with a rifle over his head, his cover on the deck upside down. And there's just shit everywhere.
Boxers.
It's like
He's
million
in boxers.
gumballs. Yeah.
I was like, the kid was in boxers and flip flops.
I'm like, what the hell is going on? He goes, oh, well, Francis left his wall locker unsecured, and I found $174 in his wallet. And I did him a favor. Since no one ever steals loose change, I went to the bank and had it all changed into pennies for him. 17,400 pennies all over the place that no one's going to steal. I mean, that's a special kind of sadistic.
Yeah.
God bless you, First Sergeant Crouch. Love it. Oh, man. Amazing. Fig, what's your favorite story from OCS?
Well, I'm going to try to get through this. And I'm going to change the name. So the innocent. Guilty. Yeah. So let's say this name was candidate Samba. All right. And he was going to be an attorney. He had graduated from law school, and he was there to go to OCS, and he was going to be a JAG officer if he made it. So we had just been issued all the, one-size-fits-all boxers and T-shirts and all that bullshit like the day before. And so, it's 3:30 in the morning. The light in the squad bay flicks on, and then the shit can goes down the center, and he's banging on the sergeant instructor's banging on the lid, screaming, get the fuck up, get out of the rack,
Lights,
so everybody
lights.
Yeah. So he's screaming, and so I run, I'm standing on line, I'm looking at the guy across from me, and he's off to my left, at the far end of the squad bay, just, yelling, screaming at everybody, and in mid-sentence, in mid-syllable, he stopped.
Oh.
And I mean, it was silent, like you could hear a pin drop. And then I heard him say,
what?
Real low, what the fuck is that, Samba? And so obviously, I had a look. I took a quick glance and, oh boy. So here's what I saw. So this kid was real tall and dangly, had big thick glasses. He was standing there, and we all got the same size boxers on. They're like fucking giant. He's standing there, and his fly is wide open, and he's got morning wood, and it's sticking out of the fly. and this guy, he gets over there, and I'm watching with my eyes turned, and he's like, he's doing this,
looking down.
What the fuck is that, Samba? Sergeant, shut the fuck up! I'm going to count to 3, and you're going to put that away, And I'm looking at the guy across from me, and he's tuck a peek. And we're crying. We both have tears running down our face because we're standing there trying not to laugh. And so this goes on for a while, and then eventually he, gives us all 3 seconds to make our rack, and we go on with the rest of the day. But he spent 4 or 5 minutes working on this poor guy. So the next morning, same shit, right? Next morning, lights flick on, shit can goes down the middle of the squad bay, and he's yelling, screaming, get online, get online. And then after he yells at everybody for a few minutes, he says, okay, I'm going to give you 5 seconds to make your rack. 1, 2, 3, go. And so, it's just a sweat exercise. So I'm pretending to make my rack, and then I hear down at the far end, holy shit, Samba. What the fuck are you trying to tell me? So I looked underneath so I could see. he had went to bed with his boxers on backwards, and now he's bent over trying to make his rack, and his whole ass is hanging out of that giant fly, right?
Oh, that was before Don't Ask, Don't Tell, you know.
Yeah.
There's always one in every platoon.
Yeah.
You really think that Lawrence from Full Metal Jacket is not a real thing, but I swear
Leonard.
every platoon has one. And I even remember taking pity on a guy like that and wanting to help him and be like, all right, man, you got to get your shit together. Here's this, you know, how you do that. And it's like, he can't do 2 push-ups and he's pissing his rack. And it's just like, everyone wants to kill him. And you're like, you get defensive. You know, I feel for the weak. So like, I try and take somebody like that under my wing, but there's only so much you can do. Eventually it just gets overwhelming where it's like, dude, what did you sign up for? Like, why are you here?
Yeah. So, all right. Well, we took that detour. Let's head back to A school. Yeah.
Pensacola. What was air traffic control school like?
Well, unfortunately, I didn't find out for 4 months. I get to Pensacola. It's like black flag all the time, right? It's 1,000% humidity,
Yeah.
1,000,000 degrees.
Yeah. I get there in June or something, so I haven't been to Florida before. And, you know, Pensacola is basically Alabama. I mean, it's way deep in the panhandle.
It's L.A., lower Alabama.
Right. So we get there and we start doing all our stuff to class up, and you start making friends in the the inbound platoons and however they organize it. And so I'm starting to make friends, and I know who I'm supposed to class up with. You got a timeline in 5 days or whatever. Go through the process. Go get my EKG. They're checking my heart, and the EKG comes back, and they're like, "Oh yeah, this happens sometimes. We got to wait for the cardiologist to come back." And I don't know what kind of leave this guy was getting in the military, but this guy was not coming back for 3 or 4 months, and I could not do anything until the cardiologist came back. So I sat on barracks support and worked straight graveyard shifts, which was shitty because I wanted to class up and get done. And the school itself is only 4 months. So by the time I started, I could have already been done, right? And my friends are moving on without me. And so that part sucked. Barrack sport was not bad because you just pulled duty all night for 12 hours and you wore a uniform then. And during the day, you didn't have to go to any, assemblies, formations. You could be in civvies all day. And so you kind of had the days off and then weekends. So it wasn't the end of the world. I spent a lot of time at the Floribama.
Right on. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
As a 20-year-old, getting the black X's on my hands and then going to the bathroom, washing them off so that I could go drink.
So you could drink,
Worked.
So those that don't know it, the Floribama is a bar that is literally across the Florida-Alabama line on the Gulf of Mexico. And there are probably 6 or 7 stages in there, some great music. But, you're literally in Alabama and Florida at any given time.
The border's on the floor. There's a red line on the floor that is the actual state line.
Right through the middle of the place, So,
wasn't the worst way to spend 4 months. And, of course, I'm staying in shape and working out and still making friends and whatever. And cardiologist comes back, takes a look at my chart. He goes, "Oh, yeah, this happens. Your heart's too good for the machine." So it's like reading an error.
Thanks
you're fine. Checks me off. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. My heart's too good. And that's why I sat here for 4 months getting passed up. So we finally, class up. And this is like the week that I'm going to, that Monday or whatever, I'm going to finally start school. So I'm excited. I've been hearing all about it from the other guys. And I'm like, finally I get to like do what I came here to do.
Right.
And the Friday before, I'm walking by and I'm wearing like, I don't know, a polo and it's untucked. I don't like tucking my shirt in, and it's like you get into, again, training situations. Some PFC walks past me and he's like, "Hey, devil dog, you need to tuck your shirt in, blah, blah, blah." And, this probably doesn't make sense to civilians, but even within the same rank, like we're both PFCs, but I've been there for 4 months and this guy's probably been there a week. So I'm like, who the fuck are you talking to me off duty about my shirt? So I tell him
you're
to
a lot
fuck
more
off.
salty than that guy, Dan.
Yeah,
right?
I'm like, fuck off, kid. Like, whatever, right? So I tell him to fuck off and I move on with my day, right? Unbeknownst to me, this kid went and like tattled on me. So
wait a minute. Is this the kid you forgot or wouldn't give extra suntan lotion too? And,
No, that's a different guy. No, that's not.
You guys got a habit of going off and telling the senior folks.
No, this situation was much worse because this guy definitely had no business telling anybody anything about me. I don't even think he knew my name. Like, I didn't know him. He was just a random guy. So I don't even know who he told what. But anyways, I don't know any of this. We're classing up. It's Monday. We go to the chow hall. We're getting chow. And then we notice the platoon's forming up to go to school. For some reason, we got the timing off by 3 minutes or whatever. So we're running late. They're forming up. We still have trays. We're like, oh shit, we got to go. Turn in our trays, run up, get up to the platoon, fall in line. And there's some PFC in charge, right? And he's calling roll. And he goes, he calls out the three of us who were in the chow hall. He goes, A, B, and C. You're a UA, right? Unauthorized absence, basically like AWOL. And I was like, what?
Yeah, you can get, and you can lose money and get restricted for that shit.
Yeah. And like missing a movement or something. So, I raised my hand. I'm in the back. I'm like, no, hey, we're right here. Absent requires you to be absent. Like, I'm like, we're right here. And again, I'm a little salty because I've been waiting 4 months. All these jackasses just got here this week, right? So I'm like, can we get a move on? Like, I'm not trying to deal with this bullshit. We're not in boot camp anymore. Again, all of my 6 months of Marine Corps career experience at this point. And he goes, he doesn't look up from his paper. Again, this is a brand new guy, another PFC who just got put in charge of the platoon. Doesn't even look up at me, which apparently is a thing in my life. I don't know why. And he goes, tardy is the same thing as UA. You should have learned that shit in boot camp, son. And this is in front of like 20 people, right? And I'm like, first of all, I'm not your son. Secondly, like, that's not how that works. He goes, all right, we'll like talk about this later or something. He dismisses me and we get information and we march up from the chow hall to the schoolhouse, which is whatever, a quarter-mile march or, the way you're supposed to do it. We fall out, we get into the schoolhouse. Again, I'm trying to find out, where's the classroom? What are we doing? And I hear, I'll make up names, but I can use mine because everybody knows my last name if they listen to the show. So they're like, Ferlito, Adam Smith, report to the goat locker. And we're like, okay, what the fuck's a goat locker? So goat locker, of course, is the instructor's break room and hangout room, whatever, where they're at. So we go show up, and, they're in front of me. I'm last. So they pound on the door. They go in. Hey, what's your problem? Why were you late? Oh, sorry. Won't happen again. So I start. All right. You dismissed. Your number 2 guy. Oh, so why were you late? Oh, sorry. It won't happen again. All right. Get the fuck out of here. Ferlito, get your ass in here. I hear this very drill instructor-y kind of voice. And I'm like, oh shit. And I walk in at attention, right? Or I'm sorry, at parade rest. I walk in, put my hands, squarely behind. It's a slightly more relaxed version than attention, but still respectful. And you can address a superior like that. And I walk, again, a classic movie from the film of my life. If I'm shooting a film, like, this scene is definitely in there. So picture, a mix of lockers and like a kitchen area and then some desks and a hangout area for these instructors. And I see a pair of boots I see a pair of boots just kicked up on the desk with a paper, like a newspaper. So whoever's behind it, all I can see is the newspaper. And I had heard rumors about this instructor who was on leave. So no one had actually interacted with him yet, but he had a reputation. And this was the time, after the late 90s, where a lot of infantry guys were not getting jobs out of the Marine Corps. They were getting this reputation for being trigger happy, so police departments weren't hiring them. So a lot of them were re-enlisting and lat moving to other jobs. So a lot of these ATC instructors were former infantry, and this guy was one of them. So I had heard all these rumors about this guy, but I hadn't actually met him yet. This is the day I got to meet him. So he unfolds his paper and throws it down. And then he stands up and walks towards me. And again, I'm at parade rest. He goes, oh, no, you're at attention right now. So I snap to attention, I'm like, I staff sergeant. And he starts kind of circling like a shark around me. And he'd also been a drill instructor. So again, he's got all the moves.
Yeah, sure. He's turned it on. Yeah. All right.
Not his first. Well,
and he kind of, like a blender, he kind of starts on low and then just starts to crank it up, right? So he goes, you know who I am, Ferlito? I'm like, Staff Sergeant Lindsay, Staff Sergeant. And he goes, I've been on leave and I've been back for 5 minutes. Or he goes, I've been back from leave for an hour. You know how many times I've heard your name? I've heard your name 5 times. 5 fucking times for later. And now he's like, he's turned the spit on. He's in my face. And now he lists this like list of discrepancies, which ends with me talking shit to this kid who told me to tuck my shirt in. Right. And there was other stuff like I'd requested leave, and it's like, how dare you request leave? You know, just bullshit like that, you know, tardy to formation. And I, you know, mouthed off to some other PFC. And so I got my book bag in one hand and my cover, my hat in the other hand, and I'm at attention. And he goes, "You better put that bag down so it doesn't fly across the room when I punch you in the chest." And I was like, oh shit, am I about to get knocked out right now? And like, I don't know what's happening, right? I'm just like bracing for impact because again, I've been through boot camp, so I've been through this before. And he's like, "You like being a PFC? Because I'll make sure you're a fucking private before I kick you out of my goddamn schoolhouse." Just going to town. And then like slowly I realize that out of the corner of my eyes, I can see, and you know, this is a Navy school, so it's like 10% Marines, maybe. The rest are all sailors. Yes. And I see all the AC1s and AC2s just rolling like they're dying. One of them's on the floor laughing. And I'm like, okay, this guy's putting on a show. So I realize what's going on here, right? He's using me as an example and trying to scare me, blah, blah, blah. So he goes, you know, he's like, "If I hear your name one more time in these 4 months, you are fucking done. You know, get the fuck out of here." Right. And I'm like, "I start, you know, I cut the C and trace about, right? I do an about face." And he goes, "TikTok," you know, and I fucking run for the door and go to class. So, you know, we start the day off, we're doing charts and pubs, and I sit down in class and it's me and 2 other Marines and the rest of the sailors. And then I somehow mentioned, I think I just mentioned why I was late to class. I'm like, "Sorry, I was getting my ass handed to me." He goes, "Oh, that was you? Oh man, we could hear that like across the hall all the way down to school." You know, so that was my first day at a school. And then, you know, we go through the curriculum and it was cool. You know, we started with charts and pubs, you really try and file a flight plan.
Yeah.
And go from wherever to wherever, following, you know, J routes and Victor routes and whatever you're doing. And then you do meteorology, and then it's all the book work up until you start doing tabletop exercises, which is basically, you know, an airport with little toy airplanes, and you start practicing what it's like to talk to a plane in a pattern. Taxi, work the pattern, you know, downwind, extend downwind to follow. Eventually, even in 2003, they already had simulators. So eventually we're going to end up doing a month in the sims and then a final test where you have to finish in the simulators. So that was school. And the whole time, you know, in my mind, I'm like, "Oh, I'm a fucking failure. You know, I have to somehow get back to the good graces of this staff sergeant because, you know, otherwise I'm a piece of crap, whatever." And so this guy was a fast runner, right? So we're going out for all the runs. And I was in the back of the rabbit pack. So like I ran with the sprinters, but I was probably the slowest out of them. Okay. So, you know, decent speed. So I'm trying to keep up. Every run we're doing, I'm trying to impress this guy. Like I made it a point for the next 4 months. I need to make up my reputation as a shitbag, you know, from this one incident. And, fast forward all the way to almost Christmas time. We're finishing school. I've passed the final test. I've done, you know, the simulator, etc. And we're getting orders. And this was true. The way it worked at the schoolhouse at the time is if you're number 1 in the class, you get first choice, right? They ask you East Coast, West Coast. And then if they can give you a choice beyond that, they'll actually ask you where you want to be stationed, right?
Yeah.
And so, unfortunately, I graduated with like a 97%, which would have put me at number 1 Marine in the entire school, except that the one guy in my class had a 99. So he was number 1 and I was number 2 in my class. Oh, yeah. So they ask him where he wants to go. He says West Coast. They send him to Camp Pendleton, right? And I already had friends that were ahead of me, right? Because I got held up and I knew they were at Camp Pendleton. So I really want to go to Camp Pendleton, catch up with my buddies. And so they asked me, "Ferlito, where do you want to go?" "West Coast, Gunny. Congratulations, you're going to Cherry Point or New River." I think it was New River, actually. And I was like, "What the fuck?" So
Of course you are.
that week,
You should have told them you wanted to go to New River. They just sent you to Pendleton.
Exactly. So that week, all the talk of the week is where your orders are, right? This is like the first time everyone's going to join the actual fleet Marine Corps and go do real shit. I mean, you're still going to be in training, but at least you're out of the schoolhouse environment. And so that's the talk of the town, and everyone's asking, oh, where are your orders? Are you happy with your orders? And some instructor asked me if I was happy with my orders, and I was like, honestly, no, Gunny, like I'm busting my ass here, and I'm, I got a 97 and I'm going to the opposite coast that I wanted to. And Staff Sergeant Lindsay got a hold of this, poked his head through the door and looks at me. He goes, Ferlito, where'd you want to go? And like, he wasn't asking me a coast. He was asking me duty station specifically. So I was like shocked, but I was like, Camp Pendleton, Staff Sergeant. He leaves, comes back a half hour later, pokes his head in again and goes, Ferlito, Merry Christmas. You're going to Camp Pendleton. So somehow he got my orders changed. And so the 4 weeks of trying really hard to make up my reputation, somewhere in there, I must have impressed him. And that story had a happy ending. So
Hot. Oh, that's awesome.
Well done.
Again,
That's
a little bit of luck.
It goes back to what I was saying about boot camp and OCS and all that stuff. They just ride your shit and make you feel like a piece of dog squeeze.
Oh, yeah.
But they want you to succeed. And when you impress them, they'll take care of you. So that's cool. Bago asked, did you get any chance to get some hands-on time in the Pensacola Tower? Did you guys at least get a tour of that or anything like that? Or no?
No, that's a good question. We never actually did. And all of our sims were still set up as Millington Field, I think. So the runways, kind of standard runway setup, right? You need a crossing runway. You need a taxiway that's going to cross, so you can practice all the different rules. So that's what we did. But we never actually did visit a tower while we were there.
Oh, that's actually kind of surprising that you didn't even get to visit it, let alone, get 20 minutes under the tutelage of a supervisor or something, but you'd think they'd change.
Definitely.
We're several minutes into the show here. I'd like to come back and talk about some funny ATC stories. I know Fig's got one or two. I've got one or two. And I'd be interested in your perspective from a controller on some of those. But I think the other thing that I'd like to do is take just a minute to chat about our sponsor this week, which is FTIratings.com, Flight Training International. So let's do that and then come back and talk about funny ATC stories.
Hey there, aviators. It's Fig RePete, your co-host from So There I Was, the show where we share all the wild aviation stories and maybe even a few tips and tricks along the way.
That's right, Fig. And speaking of tips and tricks, let's talk about something every aviator contemplating the leap into commercial airline flying has to face: getting that airline transport pilot rating, the ATP.
The good old ATP rating. Remember those days, RePete?
Ooh.
Getting your ATP with an FAA examiner in a piston engine plane that smelled like 100 low lead in somebody's old socks. You've never been inside of it before, let alone flown it.
Right? Those were crazy days. But you know what? Our friends over at Flight Training International have cracked the code on making this transition to getting your ATP or type rating way easier.
Founded in 1991, these guys have been helping pilots like us navigate the tricky waters of transitioning from military to commercial flying, or from commercial multi-engine rating to the PhD of flying the coveted airline transport pilot rating. And get this, FTI was originally founded to provide type ratings to pilots eyeing jobs at Southwest Airlines.
And talk about experience. The current owners have over 37 years of aviation under their belts. They've flown operationally in both the U.S. Navy and the Air Force, and they've been training pilots like us for the last 25 years.
And they've got an impressive list of clients, from the Air Force and Navy to FedEx, United, and even government agencies. These guys are the real deal.
Oh, absolutely, Fig. And they specialize in helping pilots just like you and me transition smoothly into the airline world. Whether you need an ATP CTP, which is what Congress mandated 10 years ago to even be allowed to take the ATP written exam, or an ATP rating or a type rating, they've got you covered.
And here's the best part of all, folks. They're VA approved. That's right. Veterans, you can use those benefits to make your transition even smoother.
Nice. Oh, let's not forget about their instructors. These guys are active and retired airline pilots, many of whom are veterans themselves. No 300-hour wonders here, just seasoned professionals who know the ins and outs of flying airliners.
Plus, their training materials are top-notch, all iPad-based, so you can study at your own pace, wherever you are. And their courseware includes everything you need to succeed, from manuals to sample orals.
And get this, Fig, their footprints are designed to require minimum time on site, so you can save your leave for terminal leave instead of spending it all in training.
That's awesome. So what are you waiting for, aviators? Don't waste your time with some designated examiner in a light twin. It smells like socks and 100 a little bit. Head over to flighttraininginternationalratings.com. That's FTIR ratings.com. And tell them you heard about them on So There I Was for a $100 discount on any course you choose.
That's FTIratings.com for all your aviation training needs. Remember, when it comes to making the leap into the airline world, Flight Training International has your back. If only they'd been around when I was trying to get my ATP. That would have been amazing stuff there. So
Sounds like a great program.
yeah. Pretty cool. So here's one of my favorite funny ATC stories. I was coming off the ramp, and I want to get your perspective from the tower and wonder if you've ever heard anything like this. And I know, Fig, you've probably got one or two as well. Coming off the ramp one morning in Newark, and guy calls up. He was actually off of ground and onto tower frequency. He was like number 4 in line for takeoff, and there were probably 15 planes lined up for takeoff. And he says, "Hey, tower, I need to pull out a line here for just a minute and run a checklist, and then we'll get back in line." Tower says, "Yeah, okay, go ahead and pull off on the parallel taxiway. Call us back when you're ready to go." So, all right. About 30 seconds later, you hear on tower frequency, "Ladies and gentlemen from the cockpit, we're next in line to go, but we're waiting on some issues with ATC to clear up. Apparently they've lost our clearance, and it's going to be a while before we can go. So we don't know. We've been told it may be as much as 30 minutes. We'll keep you updated as it goes." And he unkeys. The tower controller comes right on and goes, Continental 1225, suggest you lie to your passengers on the intercom instead of tower frequency. So you ever heard anything like that? I know every now and then you hear something on guard, but...
Oh, yeah. I mean, we've got some good ones, and, it happens. You're switching your comms, and you got 2 different radios, and et cetera. I mean, it happens all the time. And I do think that the pilots, again, so I know we're fast forwarding a little bit here, but let me just say, so I work for the FAA now. I got out of the Marine Corps. I work at San Francisco Tower. So that is now my place of work since 2010. I'll throw out a disclaimer real quick. I am not here representing neither NACA, which is my air traffic control union,
right,
nor the FAA. So I know what I'm allowed to talk about and what I'm not. In terms of presidential movement and secret stuff, I'm not going to mention anything like that. But, the everyday happenings in the tower, the frequency is recorded in public, so I know what I can say. But I am here just giving you my opinion as a controller. It's my own personal opinion. So that disclaimer aside. Yeah, happens all the time, right? Pilots are normal people like everybody else. And they sometimes screw up the same way we do. I mean, I do like the classic saying, when a pilot screws up, a pilot dies. When a controller screws up, a pilot dies, which is true, which is why we take our job seriously. And sometimes we get some shit. But yeah, in terms of the frequencies, I mean, a few great ones that I can remember is, and I'll tell you more about SFO a little bit later down the line, but ground control there can be a shit show, especially pre-COVID, when we were doing in the summer 1,500 operations a day. And if you're working a busy hour on ground and you can't split it, it's a single ground controller, the frequency gets real busy.
Well, right. And if you're watching live, I'll put it up, or if you're watching on the YouTube, but you've got 4 intersecting runways. So technically 8 intersecting
Yeah.
there. So it is, I can see where it turns into a real turd tornado, keeping everything straight when you're doing parallel landings and parallel takeoffs. And,
Well, they got a runway closed right now for maintenance.
Yeah. Oh yeah, we do. Well, if you want to keep this up, maybe now is as good a time as ever to like give you just the basics of the airport. I won't get too technical, but anybody can comment and ask questions and I can explain something. But if you want to put the map back up, essentially picture a pound sign, right? So 2 north runways, 2 west runways that all cross about in the middle and pretty much align north to south. As you can see from the diagram, it's about 14 degrees off or so. So you got runways 1 left, 1 right to the north, and runways 28 pointed west, 28 left, 28 right. Normal configuration 80% of the time is landing the 28s and departing the 1s.
Yeah.
So we got pairs coming in for the 28s landing to the west, and we got paired departures departing north, and then split.
Okay. So let me interrupt ever so briefly, because
Go ahead.
we were chatting earlier today, and I was joking about how, a TV show opens and you hear the controller say, "Clear to land, runway 43 left." And I go, "That's it. I'm out. I'm not even watching." People have no idea that aren't into aviation what the runway numbers mean. Can you quickly explain why the numbers are significant?
Sure. So if you know cardinal directions, right, north is either 0 or 360, usually in aviation. And then you got 90 is straight east, 180 is straight south, 270 is straight west. So runways are numbered in the magnetic direction. So if you look up SFO airport diagram, you'll see this. So 284.5 degrees rounds down to 280, which is abbreviated to 28. And then we have a left and a right runway. So when you see the number 28, that means it is close to 280 degrees. Again, here it's 284. That's why you can't have a runway number that's higher than 36. 36 is directly north.
Right.
37 doesn't exist, right? That'll be runway
10.
Whatever
1.
that next number
runway
is.
1.
Yeah, well, it'd still be 36, right? Because 1 is 10 degrees, not 1 degree.
Yeah,
So
fair enough.
anyways, so that's what you're looking at. And when you're talking about wind instead, wind is always from, right? So in a normal operation where we're in north or what we call west plan, the wind might be 280 at 10. That means the wind is coming from 280 heading at 10 degrees, or I'm sorry, at 10 knots. Excuse me. And obviously, you guys who are pilots know this very well, but for a general audience, planes want to be taking off aligned with the wind in their face and landing the same way as much as possible. When you're managing an airport and you're doing air traffic, the idea is to choose the operational configuration that is most aligned with the wind. So we do change operations. This airport flips upside down, becomes even more of a shit show. But our general operation is landing to the west, departing to the north. As you can see, 28 right to the west is our longest runway. So you also get a lot of the big long haulers flying out to Korea and China, or sometimes Hawaii. They need 28 for departure, even though it's not our advertised runway, because they need the long runway more aligned with the wind, etc. So now if you were to zoom in, with the unique thing about SFO is that you have 4 runways that all cross at a high energy point in the middle. Oftentimes crossing runways, they cross like at the departure end of the runway where the chances that a plane actually hits anything are very low. Here we are constantly pointing planes at each other and shooting the gaps all day long.
When they hit the intersection, they are smoking.
Yeah. The departures are doing 120 knots, maybe going through the intersection, right? And the arrivals are slowing down to maybe 80 or something. But, it's again, high energy and not a good place to be deciding that you need to leapfrog over an arrival, which, is a mistake that is very real and can happen there. So we have controllers and pilots visit all the time that look out the window and are like terrified because they're like, what? You guys this is crazy, right? You look at LAX, which is a busier airport than us. They have 2 parallels that are separated and do not intersect, right? So they're busier, but it's not quite as complex. And the other thing about SFO is very small landmass. So we do not have a lot of space to stash airplanes. And because of the runways all crossing in the middle, the local controller, which is what you on the radio you would call tower controller. He's working the runways and the airspace around. It can really only be one person doing the job. A lot of other places, you look at O'Hare, they got 9 runways, they got 3 different towers and 3, 4, 5 separate ground controllers. So the workload per person is a lot lower, even though they do higher numbers than SFO.
Oh, interesting.
The unique thing
Okay.
here
I hadn't thought of it.
You're doing that by yourself.
Yeah. Because I always look at like Boston Logan. You want to see a spaghetti string of runways. They got all these intersecting parallel crossing runways. And they have 2 tower frequencies. So, I'm assuming those guys, they're going to be standing right next to each other talking, right?
Sometimes. So sometimes a place has a single tower with multiple local controllers, but other times, like O'Hare has 3 control towers because it's very spread out. So again, when it comes to the workload per person, SFO is pretty high up there in terms of volume and complexity. You do have an assistant that sits next to you and listens, and they do coordination and altitude restrictions and stuff like that. And they're there to stop you if you're about to do something real stupid. But in terms of actually working the runways, you got to do it by yourself, which is a lot to ask a brand new person coming in. Yeah. Ground control is often one person. Sometimes if we have the staffing, we split it in 2. So that's kind of the basics of SFO. I don't want to bore anyone, especially if you don't have the diagram in front of you, but I wanted to kind of give you the background a little bit. So in terms of stuck mic stories, so ground can just be a hornet's nest because, the frequency gets jammed up and it gets super busy, and managing a busy frequency at an international airport is a skill unto itself because you have to be really assertive. That's why we get into it all the time in the tower. It's really easy to mouth off to your compatriot because, I don't always want to call it stress levels because I wouldn't say we're that stressed out, but it's a high intensity environment and you have to be assertive on frequency with the pilots. Otherwise they'll walk all over you, right? If you hesitate, the guy that's flying an RJ from SFO to LA 4 times a day, all he wants to do is get his transmission in to get to the runway and get the fuck out of there. He's not trying to help you make it through training. So, if you're not managing the frequency, it is going to devolve into an S show. So one of these times when I'm really busy, I got a lot of planes pushing back onto the taxiway. And what's happening is a lot of pilots are stepping on each other, right?
Okay.
Everybody's calling for taxi at the same time. And in your ear, that sounds like, it's just terrible. You can't hear anything and you don't know what the hell's going on. It's just one frequency. So I got 4 planes pushed back and they're all unhooking from their tugs. And so I just have to guess at this point who's trying to call me because I've already said blocked. I've already said 3 calling at once and I can't get a clear frequency. So I reach out to a US Airways Airbus at this point. So Cactus is the call sign, right? Okay. Same as the flight Sully was flying back when we had a Cactus call sign, which is an old America West call sign. That's where that comes from. And so I go, Cactus 1442. I think that was you. Runway 1 right, taxi via Alpha Alpha 1. I hear him key up. He goes, "We're not ready, you idiot."
Oh boy.
What a douche.
I don't think he was trying to key up and say that because pilots like their jobs and that is, offensive and not professional. So I think he just said it without keying up, not realizing that he had keyed up. And honestly, in the moment,
outside voice,
I had to laugh. I didn't get offended. I was like, okay,
that's almost funny. A show title for us. I'm sorry. We're not ready, you idiot.
That's fine. Yeah. We'll see if I can beat it. But, that's one. And, I've got other ones that aren't necessarily firsthand, but they've kind of gone around the campfire. But from SFO, coworkers of mine that it's happened to. Things like, somebody complaining on frequency, or talking smack to the tower, and or someone keying up in the middle of a line going, "I'm bored," and the ground controller going, "Who said that?" And the guy keying back up and going, "I said I'm bored, not stupid," right? And unkeying.
Right.
But there are always ones like that, and I'm pretty relaxed in the tower. I try and not get into pilots' shit. We've been making the rounds on YouTube a lot. I know you guys are familiar with. I know you've interviewed Juan from Blanco Lirio, who has a great channel, and he references that Vaz Aviation channel all the time, which we also pay attention to. And man, we had been making the rounds on that more often than we'd like in the last year at SFO. For example, there's a good one with me that's up to 200,000 views now, I think, and it's a Qatari Qatari flight trying to get out to 28 right, and he just cannot get a correct readback, no matter how slow I'm talking. I must have talked to this guy 15 times, you know, and I got shit to do. I'm talking to other planes, and this is an international
You're not the only guy on the field. This is not recurrent
yeah.
training.
Right. And, you know, I modestly, I'll give myself an 8 out of 10 on professionalism. I never lost my shit, and I am not, you know, I'm always like, hey, look, you want to argue, you can call the tower. I'm not going to do this on frequency. It can only make me look bad. It's never going to make me look good to argue with a pilot on frequency. But at some point I had to, you know, he reads back for the 18th time, doesn't read back a hold short instruction or whatever it is. And I go, Qatari, no, that is like 3 errors in a row. You need to listen to the frequency. And of course, like YouTube got on that and blew it up, and most people defended me because, again, there are people who have said much worse on frequencies. So it's a constant battle of trying to maintain your professionalism. But we're understaffed, and we're working a lot of overtime and 6-day work weeks. And, you know, you can only deal with so much dumbassery to where, you know, it's like, am I the only one required?
Another
to be a
show title.
professional
You can only deal with so much dumbassery.
I think you'll like this, Dan. This was, oh my gosh, this was over 10 years ago, but I'm in Chicago, O'Hare, off the gate, taxiing. A giant line of weather moved through. They shut everything down. So, you know, there's 80, 90 airplanes stuck on the taxiways, you know, nose to tail.
Fig, what are you flying? Because I know my audience is not familiar with you guys yet, although I'm going to blow up your show and definitely make them familiar. So you guys are former Marine Harrier pilots. I know we'll get into that in more detail later, but then you both flew airliners. Is that where you went?
We both do currently. Yeah.
Currently.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah. We're not going to tell you for who.
But you can tell me what platform.
Yeah.
I'm in a Boeing 737.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we're out here on on the taxiways in O'Hare with everybody else that got off the gate trying to get out before the weather came but didn't get. Mm-hmm. So everybody shut down, and we sat there for 45 minutes, and then ground says, "Okay, we're going to start doing departures to the west. So don't call me, I'll call you." And then he starts rattling up, "Hey, American, 123, start your engines. United, 256, start your engines." And then he goes through this list, not even taking a breath. And then he starts saying, "Okay, Delta, taxi to 22 left," and starts rattling off all these. And nobody's talking except him. And then this guy goes to take a breath, and you hear this. "Ground, this is Cessna 59er Juliet Hotel Papa. We're ready to taxi from the Signature." And then there was quiet for like 5 seconds, which is an eternity on that frequency. And the ground controller comes back and says, "Cessna Juliet 5, whatever the hell he said. Right. American, start them up. United." And he goes, and 45 minutes later, we taxied and took off, and he never got
he
back
still
to
hadn't
that
circled back? Oh, man. Oh, that's funny. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So what do you think? Is this a good time? You sent us a recording. This is a guy under training at San Francisco. Is this a good time?
No. That was out in Iraq. So why don't we?
I thought this was at San Francisco Tower.
No. I'm going to give you the full background. So why don't we get to Iraq, and then I can play you that tape, because that'll be in context.
We'll get into that here briefly.
So, and again, we're trying to do a joint show, so this is a little bit organic, but I am going to ask these guys a lot more about their experience. But I think we're probably trying to get to the end of my story, and then we'll break out into you guys' background, and we'll talk movies a little bit at the end too. So, if for those of you who are tired of hearing me talk, don't worry, eventually I'll shut up. But all right, so
I like hearing you talk, Dan. This is really good stuff, man.
This is outstanding stuff.
I finally get done at Pensacola. It is now beginning of 2004. I get to my first duty station, NFG, no fucking good, Camp Pendleton, California, Marine Corps Air Station. At the time, this is Mag 39 ground space, and we're talking Cobras, Hueys, and 46s or Frogs. So for those of you who are familiar with the Chinook, the big Army CH-47 helicopter, this is very similar banana dual rotor but a little bit smaller and amphibious, right? They can land on water. Pretty cool aircraft. I miss those guys. Replaced by the V-22 Osprey or VM-22 Osprey, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
So I get to the tower. I remember my first time, it was at night. And this is, Camp Balance, it's like single runway, very simple in terms of taxiways and all that. But
a bunch of helo bubbas. So,
a lot of helos, and it also it's got a long GCA airspace. So all these guys are training to get all their initial instrument ratings and do PARs and ASRs and get talked to the ground.
Which is radar controlled approaches.
Yeah, so we have a tower. This is what's called an up-down, essentially. Very few of them left in California in the FAA. Santa Barbara and Bakersfield are two examples. On the East Coast, it's more common to have controllers working both tower and radar. But Pendleton was a great first duty station because you did get the opportunity to work tower and radar if you wanted to. If you wanted to push the train in both places, you could do it. So I start in the tower, I get through my baby quals, meaning clearance, ground control, and then there's a line, there's a wait to train on local. And so they're like, hey, we'll send you down to radar for now, get rated through there. Go down to radar and go all the way through radar watch supervisor. And so, you do, for those of you who aren't familiar with PARs, the precision approach radar, this is technology from Vietnam era, late 1960s probably. But pretty cool. I mean, I kind of miss doing PARs. What other situation could you be in? Whereas, let's say you get in at 17 and a half and you get through training and you're 18 and so you're not even 19 years old yet. And you could be talking, especially in Miramar, you could be talking an F-18 down to the runway manually just using the radar and your voice saying left of course, turn right heading, make non-standard degree. It's been a long time, so the phraseology is a little rusty, but make non-standard rate turns, turn left, stop, turn, slightly above glide path, and luckily for training, I got to do it with H1s, which are much slower than F-18s. So for training, it's great because you have a lot more time to talk them down. But you could get an aircraft within 30 feet of centerline in the soup just by being good at working PARs. So it's a really cool technology and very human dependent, which means human error is also a huge factor and you have to be really proficient. So that was kind of my experience there. And, there were some crashes and stuff that happened. I think my first couple of weeks at work, you guys might remember this because this would have been beginning of 2004. There was a huge, and Camp Pendleton, down in Southern California, huge base, huge firing range / nature preserve. It's kind of a weird concept, but they got artillery ranges and, bombing ranges for aircraft and also a herd of bison that when they decide to walk through the artillery ranges, they're protected. So they have to just shut everything down. So you'll have Marines in the field just sleeping out there for a week waiting for this damn bison to move along because they can't rightfully shoot artillery at them, right? So you got all that going on. There was everything's protected there.
Big barbecue.
So there was a Huey doing MVG ops out in the ranges, and they caught a telephone wire or a high tension cable with their skids.
Right.
Yeah, and I think the skids, technically they're supposed to break off so this doesn't happen, but they didn't break off. So if you can imagine the helicopter, it's got its skids underneath, catches the wire, the rotors are still pulling the aircraft up. So what happens, and what happened in this case, is it flipped the helicopter forward. They did a forward somersault essentially and went straight into the ground upside down. And my buddy was dating the girl who worked for the base paper at the time, so he got to go out there with her because she was reporting on it. One guy survived the crash with broken back, broken legs, died later in the hospital. Everyone else, body parts everywhere. So that was kind of like a
ear, teeth, and eyeballs.
Rough introduction to aviation that week. Even though I didn't see it, I realized that, there's some serious shit going down out there, and piloting is a dangerous job. The other one is one week, I don't know, several months later, came into work, and we had single runway and a grass strip. So the Hueys and H1s would do practice autos all the time. Practice auto rotation from a non-pilot perspective like me, and I'm sure Styx can correct me on this, but essentially you're practicing for if you lose your engine, you can use your descending velocity and forward speed to get the air to push up through the rotor blades that are still spinning and cushion your fall and make a safe landing even if you lose your engine.
It's a controlled crash, Dan. Let's just be honest. It's a controlled crash.
Pretty much. And we had a Cobra pilot, probably in training, who did not calculate properly, and he put the skids right into the grass there. That I know that guy ended up in the hospital. They survived, but they had some back injuries. That was a bad one. I just showed up to work, and there was a static display of a AH-1 Cobra in the grass that week. So,
damn it.
So yeah, so that was my intro to actually working fleet air traffic and aviation there. And then, I spent some time in radar. I get rated through radar watch supervisor, and lo and behold, eventually my orders come in for the det. So before I can get back up to the tower and finish my, what we call a CTO, certified tower operator, that's when you're rated through local and you're a fully fledged tower controller, I got orders to the det. So I go to reverse flow of the air through the rotor system, kinetic energy into the rotor system, then recovered in the flare at the bottom. So sticks not unlike
which is a lot of fancy words for controlled fucking crash, Dan.
Equals controlled crash. Exactly. Yeah. I don't know that all helicopter pilots have an engineering background, but I got a coworker who's still current on helicopters, and man, they can describe the physics of a rotor blade the way I don't know. They are.
I can do it in 3 letters. P.
It's pure magic.
M.
Yeah, it's pure fucking magic.
Right.
Sticks can go on. He'll talk for an hour about that shit, and my eyes start glossing over, my palms start sweating, I feel like I'm going to throw up, and then we eventually got to get him to stop.
Yeah, but they are smart in a very specific way from my experience. Except for the Army guys. Let me talk shit about the Army for just a second. Now, all right.
So Army can,
all right.
Do it. I dare you.
Fair enough. We got 3 Army rotor heads on. Yeah,
there you go. I'll throw the disclaimer out there. I respect all the services, but we also have to rag on each other, right? So
yes,
I've had very limited experience with Army pilots. However, I did have a pair of Black Hawk pilots at Pendleton come in. And again, it's runway 21 and 3.
What kind of training, son?
Army training, sir! Army training, sir!
Sorry, had to do it.
So we got these 2 Black Hawks doing just a regular, they're taking off towards the beach off runway 21 out towards Oceanside. They're going to, do whatever, either go back to their home base or they're doing some exercise. So I'm working in the tower. This is later on. Clearing for takeoff. Most basic instruction on a single runway you could ever give, right? You scan the runway, wind 2305, runway 21, cleared for takeoff. And this pair of Army Blackhawks is at the approach end of the runway with a giant 21 in front of them, and they turn right and up the GCA approach corridor, opposite direction to the finals. Upside down in the wrong direction, and I'm like, did you not? And so we're scrambling, right? We're sending the GCA guys around. We're calling downstairs. Hey, wave off, send your guy around. These Blackhawks, I don't know what these guys are doing. And I'm like, did you not see the upside down 21 when you were taking off? So that was my first experience with Army helicopter pilots. I'm sorry to say.
Oh, too funny.
God bless them.
I know there's a lot of good ones out there, but we have to talk our shit when we can.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so. Fast forward a little bit, and I finally get orders. I get sent out to the det. We do our workups and get sent out to Iraq. So this is 06 late summer of 06. We land. I have a picture of the thermometer that I sent you, but we land in Kuwait. We take an L-1011 to Bangor, Maine from Pendleton. And you guys have talked about advanced party, and that's what I was. I was Advon. So I'm getting sent 10 days ahead of the rest of the det to learn the ropes, get certified. Then everybody leaves, our det gets there, and we train our own guys, right? So that's what I'm doing for radar out there. That's the plan. Okay. So we get out to Bangor. We fly out to Kuwait. It's 125 degrees or something. It's insanely hot. Then we get on a C-130, which, as everybody knows, is not a climate-controlled aircraft, and fly from Kuwait to Al-Assad, so out in western Anbar in the middle of nowhere. If you look at those 3 big lakes in the western part of Iraq, we are just there off of the, I believe, off the Euphrates. So that's still an operational base and lots of activity going on there. So we get out there, and it's my first experience being deployed, and it's interesting. It's a big base. I'm not in the infantry. We're not going outside the wire. There's infantry there going outside the wire all the time, and there's the pilots are flying in combat, landing in minefields, getting shot at. All kinds of shit is going on. But generally speaking, we're getting mortared like once a month. But the deployment before me, they were getting mortared 2-3 times a week. So comparatively speaking, it's not really a big deal, right? It's pretty chill. It's a huge base. So when we do get attacks, they're not aimed. They're just lobbing mortars in to random places, and most of the base is empty space. So, luckily no casualties, anything like that. But, your first mortar rounds that you hear dropping is an interesting sensation.
Get your attention, huh?
Yeah, we did have one good one. We had a large missile strike hit, and I worked radar out there. So we're in a CCS. It's basically 2 shipping containers, kind of cattywampus. Yeah, that's the outside of it with a little bit of barriers. And then you're inside these 2 shipping containers with a PAR, an actual touch screen from like the 1970s, but it did work. And so we're out there doing approaches, doing GCAs. You've got all the hot ranges out there. So you got a whiteboard with all the kill boxes, right? Different altitudes are hot for people dropping, paradrops and dropping bombs, and hot ranges, practice ranges, all this stuff. And so we're out there doing our regular everyday work, and the tower is probably a mile away from us, right? All my other buddies work in the tower, and a missile hit right outside the tower. And I remember the feeling still. I was in the CCS, which is kind of has a somewhat pressurized door to keep the noise out. And I could feel the explosion in my chest. My whole chest rumbled, and we were like, oh shit, that was pretty close. And, one of my buddies, I think, was out on the catwalk of the tower, and he was like, I'm definitely going to have to change my pants after this one. So, luckily no one got hit, but like I said, you get on the Sipper out there. There's like secret chat rooms while you're deployed where you can see a lot of the operational stuff. We had a Predator feed that would show us like actual live Predator footage. You guys might be familiar with this one. We did have what I remember as the Lake Haditha incident, which is a small lake north of Al Assad. And this is wintertime. So, the desert in Iraq in the winter is one of the coldest places I've ever been. Luckily, I worked indoors, but these guys are out there in a 46, and they're flying over the lake. They got grunts in the back going out to do some kind of combat operation, and they lose an engine. It's got 2 engines. They could go down to ground hover essentially over the lake, and so I think they were headed northbound. So they descend down over this lake, and the pilot they're doing their things, right? Aviate, navigate, communicate. They're going through their emergency checklist. And their idea is that they could land on water technically, right? The CH-46 is designed to float.
No, it doesn't float.
Oh, no. Oh, it doesn't
it fucking
really?
Sinks. It flips over upside down and fucking sinks.
About 40 feet below the surface.
Yeah. It's fucking great.
I stand corrected.
It's great.
So they're trying to make it to the ground then for good reason. So they're hover taxiing basically right over the water on one engine, trying to safely make it to the ground. I'm sure they've already called for reinforcements, right? Because a whole team of grunts is going to get in there and have to pull them out, probably destroy the aircraft because it's not going to be recoverable, and they're not just going to leave it out there. Unfortunately, the kids in the back who were carrying, 90 plus pounds of gear, panicked and decided against the captain's instructions to jump out of the aircraft over the water. And all 4 or 5 of those guys drowned in the middle of winter in Iraq out over Lake Haditha. So I remember us seeing that on the Sipper and seeing the reports, and it's a somber feeling. Obviously, people are dying here and there from combat operations, but I'm sure those pilots felt real shitty about it, even though it wasn't their fault, because it was an avoidable tragedy, unfortunately. So, yeah, that's a few. I got one more, and then we can play you guys the audio of a real good tape. Iraq, interestingly, was the first place I found out that my blood was radioactive, and the Marine Corps didn't want it. So, basically, again, there's a lot of infantry operations out there, out of the base, and they're coming in and out of the wire, going to the hospital. Guys are getting hit. So there's a constant request for blood donations at the hospital, and you would hear it go out over the loudspeaker, right? All B positive personnel report to the hospital, this and that, blah, blah. And I tried going a couple of times, but you're in the military and everyone's volunteering. So usually if you were more than half a mile from the hospital when they made the call, it was going to be such a line, they were going to turn you away. So one day I'm walking back from chow or something, and I'm walking in front of the hospital, and they call for A positive personnel to report to the hospital. I'm A positive. I'm 20 feet in front of the door. So I was like, okay, it's my day. Obviously, I need to go in and give blood. So I go in, I wait in line, I start filling out the checklist, right? And it's like, have you, had sex with any African monkeys since 1982? And like all these weird questions. They're trying to predict, if your blood is safe to donate or whatever kind of questions they ask. I'm being facetious, but there was a question about African animals. Like,
of course they are. Yeah.
Bats and stuff like that.
Wait, what about South American monkeys?
I think those are okay.
That doesn't count.
That's good for a friend.
Yeah, New World is okay. Yeah. So I fill out the questionnaire and I get rejected. And they're like, sorry, we can't take it. And, the nurse or whoever, the corpsman can't actually explain why they just reject
No, because that would offend you,
I guess. And so, I think about it and I was like, there was a question about whether I had lived in Europe between and I'm making numbers up here, but it was something like between 1984 and 1995 or something like that. And I was like,
oh, yeah, I was born there.
Chernobyl exploded in 1986, and I was definitely in northern Italy in 1986. And I remember my mom even telling me stories. Now, that cloud of radioactivity mostly went north. In fact, it affected Scandinavian countries and England a lot more than it did northern Italy. But there was a time, my mom remembers, where the news was like, don't buy produce, don't buy milk for like a week or two. And then they gave the all clear, and my mom was like, "What the fuck?" I'm pretty sure we were eating rice and beans from our storage for a while because my mom was like, "I don't think so. Like that doesn't go away in 2 weeks." And I'd given to the Red Cross like in high school before. I'd donated blood for regular stuff, but apparently for the military, my blood wasn't good enough. So,
how about that?
Interesting things you find out in the military.
Yeah.
All right. Let's get to the moment that I know you guys have been waiting for. So I've got this tape that I've been carrying with me for years, which I have to thank my buddy who was involved in the incident and is actually getting the ass chewing, and my other friend who was smart enough to go pull the tapes from the techs and actually get the recording. And
we're going to play that, and then we'll end the first episode on that probably,
but wait,
or maybe soon.
Before you play that, Dan, is there a story while you were in Al Assad? Is there a story about a Marine Hornet that went ripping through a range or a hot zone or
yeah.
I almost forgot about that. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Thanks for reminding me. It's less exciting, but I guess it was my first encounter directly with a jet fighter pilot, because remember, I worked helicopters back at Pendleton. So going to Al Assad is the first time I've got a mix of C-130s and A-10s, which from the outside, I do love Harriers, but from the outside, like an A-10 is a pretty fucking cool airplane. But mixing them into the pattern, they are slow as shit, and just anything is going to go up its ass. So not fun to work in any kind of pattern. So again, they've got lots of active bombing ranges, mostly for practice. Some of it's operational, but within approaches airspace, which is what I'm working, lots of stuff you have to avoid. And on this particular day, we had a hot range. I don't know. My memory's a little shaky at this point, but let's say 6 miles off the departure end of the runway at, 6,000 feet or something. So it's and of course, depending on what's firing and what's going on, sometimes you can fly above it. Sometimes you can fly below it, I suppose. But most of the time it's at or below altitude.
Not recommended.
Right. From 6,000 below, this keypad is hot. No one's allowed to fly through it because they're either firing artillery or doing bombing operations or whatever. So I got this hot range. I think maybe call sign was BAT, something like that. F-18 comes screaming off the departure end, right? And everybody knows F-18 pilots are I don't know how it is in your community if they are still the shit hot guys, even compared to other fighter pilots. But
absolutely they are. Just ask them
on them, right? Yeah, exactly. So this guy takes off, and I'm like, hey, you got a hot range at such and such, and I tell him, turn left heading, blah blah blah, and he's like, Roger, like reads my instruction back and then flies straight the fuck right through this bomber. And I'm like, Jesus Christ. And I'm calling him, trying to get him to turn, can't get him to turn. So, of course, I call the radar chief in there and I got to file a report because even out in Iraq, like this isn't Nam. There are some rules, right? And so
not a lot, but some.
Yeah, so I fill out my report. I tell them what happened, etc. And it was actually a really good. There's an old MiG from Al Assad. It was a really good lesson in how fallible your recall and your memory can be, and this is why eyewitness testimony is really unreliable. I filled out the report within an hour or two of the incident happening, and the gunny pulls me aside and goes, "Hey, man, I pulled the tapes and I listened, and your report has all these what you think you said, which is what was going on in my head, didn't actually get on frequency and it was still the pilot's fault in the end. Like he still flew through an active range, but it was a good initial lesson in realizing that, you'd be surprised what you think you remember saying and thinking. And then you pull the tapes and you're like, oh shit, I never actually said that. Like, I'm sure you guys have had incidents like that.
I think I've had that same situation with my wife.
Yeah.
Honestly,
I that's why I want to give my wife a tattoo on her forehead that says, "Warning: this conversation is being recorded."
In my mind, I've told her very detailed instructions, and then I find out later I didn't say shit, but in my mind I did. I told you this already.
Right?
It's weird, really loud,
right?
So yeah, if only everything was recorded and you could just play the tape back, right? So. Yeah. That leads us well into this next story, which again, you guys listening are going to be hearing this in public for the first time. We've kind of kept this one close to the chest. I did a long time ago get permission from my buddy to publicize this. I don't think he was thrilled about it because I think he's still a little butthurt that he's on the butt end of the joke. But honestly, this isn't about making fun of him. This tape is hilarious no matter who is involved. And if it were me, I'll be just as happy to publicize it because it's just... Sure. It is the best ass chewing that I've ever heard on tape. So here's the scenario. My buddy's Advon. He's coming in to take over for his debt, and he's a tower controller. So he's got some experience in Iwakuni and other places. He's got a couple of CTOs. So, for a 3-year guy.
He's a qualified control tower controller.
Yeah.
In several towers.
Yeah, certified tower operator. He's got a couple of them, so he knows what he's doing, and that's why you get picked for Advon, right?
Okay.
Because you got 6 months more experience than the next guy down the line, and you got a week, you got 10 days to check out. Which normally in training you would have months and months and months to check out. So you do have to kind of be quick about it, and there's not a lot of time to mess around. So he's in the tower training and trying to finish up so that you can then get a check ride, similar to pilots, right? When they say you're ready, you then get on with an instructor. They just listen to you for half hour, 45 minutes, and they, give you the sign of the cross. They sign you off, and now you're good to work by yourself. So that's what he's working up towards.
All right.
And he's working with the tower chief. This old guy, his nickname was Doc. And this guy... I'm not going to quote the branches he was in because I can never remember which 3 of them they were. But let's just say he was like Army, Marine Corps, Air Force, not in that order. He'd have been in 3 branches of the service. He's like in his, it's hard to say. He's got white hair. He's Steve Martin, full on white head of hair. So he's got to be in his mid 40s at least and kind of grayed early.
Old bastard.
He's a geezer.
Oh yeah. Crusty as shit.
He's a geezer.
Crusty as shit. He's a gunny, and he's got I found out later, he's got 4 DUIs on his record, and he used to say the most hilarious. He's from either Mississippi or Alabama. I can't remember.
And real quick, Advon is
advanced party. So again, if you've got Max 1, for example, Marine Air Control Squadron 1, right, part of Mag 39, right, West Coast Pack. You're deploying. This is 3rd Marine Air Wing. And you have Max 1, which is a air traffic control and related reinforced et ceteras, right? Motor T, you got some admin, you got whatever. You're supporting the fleet in the Marine Corps. Your job is to support the pilots. And the pilots in the Marine Corps are supporting the infantry, right? That's kind of how the Marine Corps is organized. It is all around supporting infantry.
The Marine Air Ground Task Force.
Exactly.
Okay.
So you have 3 debts, Alpha, Bravo, and Charlie, because you're rotating them through and they're replacing each other ideally every 7 months, because unlike the Army, we don't really like to keep Marines out there for 12, 13 months, 18 months when we can avoid it. We try and kind of rotate them through. So when you're doing the RIP, replacement in progress, one det is out there. Let's say Bravo is out there. They were out of Miramar at the time. So Alpha is going to go replace them. Well, you don't bring in the entire det to replace a det. You pick your most experienced guys, and I've heard you guys talk about this. I know this happens with flying squadrons as well. And you send out 10% of, or whatever it is, of your forces. They go out there, they train, they learn the job in like a week to 2 weeks. It's very accelerated training. Then the det that's there leaves and your det gets there and you train your own det. So I was advon for radar. That's what I had to do. And my buddy is advon for the tower. So he's training in the tower. And again, he's got a week to check out, very accelerated. Yeah. And Doc, this gunny, is just a no bullshit, Southern guy. Again, bunch of DUIs, just like I wouldn't call him shit hot, but definitely great controller, like really, really knew his job. Had kind of longer hair. Like literally this guy would walk past the base CO, which is like some colonel, like is not usually yelling at people about haircuts, but every time he'd be like, God damn it, Gunny, get a fucking haircut, right? Like this guy's getting yelled at by officers to get a haircut. That's how like little he cared about like regs and stuff. And he had so many famous lines. Like he would just drop MFers on frequency, like a classic line. He would say, traffic flight 253's landing motherfucking Oscar Bravo. And just like, it just rolled off his tongue. The pilots never called him on it. Nobody else called him on it. It's out there somewhere on recorded tapes, And he had the best sayings, the best Southern sayings. I still remember to this day, right? He'd be talking about some shit situation with a bunch of F-18s that are doing the brake wrong and they're about to like slam into each other. And he's like, I fit all 5 of them motherfuckers under a $1 bill, like out the window. Or one of my favorites I still use to this day is, you're about as useful as a screen door on a submarine. Or in talking about girls, he would say she's about 2 axe handles wide, or big enough to burn diesel. He's one of these guys, just very old school, very unwoke, very not PC, just old breed Marine Corps, Nice. So, and got all this experience, right? And he's the tower chief. Side note, this guy kicked a couple of sailors out of Iraq. Straight up. Like we were at some point, we had an attachment of sailors on the Mew or something that came up, and they were controllers, and they came up to train with us, and he lost his patience with one of them and kicked him out of the tower, called their command and said, get these guys the fuck out of here. They have no idea what they're doing. Put them back on the boat. And he kicked them out of Iraq, literally. And when they were leaving the tower, he yelled down at them. He said, anchors away, bitches. So again, this guy was just full of stories like this. So this is the character who is in charge of
he's tower
supervising my friend and seeing if he can make it through the tower, right? And one thing about training in air traffic is you got 2 mics, the trainee mic and then the instructor mic. The instructor mic has override capability. So when I'm training people at SFO, if somebody's about to do some dangerous, dumb shit and I can see it coming, right? They're trying to launch a plane into another plane. If I overkey him and tell the guy stand by or hold position, my voice is going to go out, not the trainees. That's how most air traffic works. It's a safety precaution, right? Yeah. Out at Al Assad, the mics were not set up that way. So there is no override capability, one. So if your trainee is doing some dumb, dangerous shit, you got to like slap him and get him to unkey and tell him to stop. Like, hey, unkey, right?
Yeah,
and then
so
you got to key up.
Yeah.
That's just the way it works, right? And number 2, which is what gets us to this tape, is that the tower environment, the mics are always hot. So this is not normal. In air traffic, if you hit a button for a relief briefing that's recorded for good reason. If you're keying up a transmission, that's all recorded. You can pull it back later. But we don't have what pilots have as a cockpit voice recorder that just records the ambient sound of...
I didn't realize that. I thought you guys were always hot mic amongst yourselves. So in the event of a mishap, they could always go back and go, what were you thinking? What were you talking about? So
it would
that's
make
interesting to me. Yeah.
sense, but
Yeah.
man, the shit that we talk about, that if
enough.
I really have to square away the tower, sometimes I'll be like, hey, we're below 10,000 feet. Shut the fuck up, right?
Yep.
For like a pilot reference. But it's also a high tension environment, and we're not actually flying an airplane, so you have to allow a little bit of banter back and forth, and shit talking in the tower. It's very common. What I like to say, like at SFO, shit rolls to the right or shit rolls clockwise, meaning the first position to get busy is clearance delivery, where all these strips are printing out, and you're like, oh, here comes the push, right? So clearance is tubing, is a common expression, right? Tubing means you're going down the drain, you're going down the shitter. And so everyone will be talking shit to clearance, but then ground, now all those planes are pushing back. So now ground's tubing, and local isn't busy at all. So we're like, hey man, you got time for a question? We're like, hey, you doing all right over there? Right? You're always talking shit to the other person and poking them. And then eventually the shit rolls all the way to the right. And now local's not talking shit because they have the planes. So that's very common. So out in this environment, everything's recorded. It's basically like having a tower cockpit voice recorder. And that's what this recording is. You're not hearing the frequency, which is why in the blank spaces, what's happening is the pilots are talking, but you won't hear that. And the controllers are waiting to talk. So you're hearing both the banter in the tower between controllers from the instructor to the trainee, and you're hearing their transmissions as they're coming out of their mouth, but not on the actual frequency. So this guy, Doc, had a habit of being an overkeyer, right? He tended to step on you and talk over you just because he wanted it done his way, even though what you were doing wasn't necessarily unsafe, right? And that's just common. He was an aggressive instructor, and that kind of happens. But again, over there, you've got this weird thing where you can't actually overkey someone. And so my buddy was getting really frustrated and he was in my can, like in our off time, and he came in to talk to my friend who worked in the tower. And he said, man, I'm really frustrated. I feel like I know what I'm doing, but he's constantly overkeying me. And this is the kicker, right? So going into this week's situation, my buddy gives him this advice. He goes, man, Doc's just like that. He's going to overkey you. Just keep talking. If you're confident and you know what you're doing, don't worry about it. Just keep talking and he'll unkey and he'll leave you alone. You just got to act like you know what you're doing, and you know what you're doing. You're fine, right? So he's like, all right. So he's going to the tower with this idea that he's got to be confident. He's got to man up and just stay keyed up, and it's going to be fine. And they've got some weird situation. There's a hole in the runway. I'm not sure if it's from a mortar round or what. And two F-18s are trying to join up as a flight, but they got to talk them around this hole in the runway. And that's why it's like not really standard phraseology. It's a little bit complicated, which is not a thing that trainees are good at doing.
So that's why
right?
there's 10,000 feet of runway instead of 12.
Yeah. What does the ATIS say, right? The ATIS has a shortened runway. He's trying to verify all that with clearance.
And ATIS
delivery.
is a recorded thing that we hear over and over and over again. It gives you the runway, the weather, all that stuff, and it tells you what runway is being used. So, okay.
Exactly. So you'll hear these, they're talking to this flight of two F-18s, and they're trying to
automatic Transguide information service.
Yeah.
There you go. And they're trying to get these planes to line up and get out, which again is a little bit non-standard, which is where you run into trouble when you're a trainee. Yeah. And my buddy is going into this trying to be confident and trying to stay keyed up. And let's just say it did not go according to plan.
Yeah, the 10 by 2, right.
East of the C-130.
So when I saw him pass, I didn't know about C-130.
For future reference.
I'm not even giving for future reference. What does the ATIS say? What is the ATIS saying? First 2,000 feet of runway
2,000 feet unusable.
Okay.
Can you pause it real quick? Okay, so the guy with the Cajun accent is the trainee.
Okay.
The guy who's saying, what does the ATIS say? That is Doc. Just to give you the background.
Sounds good. And here we go.
Aircraft will be departing from the 10,000 foot remaining board. Is that on there?
No.
That needs to be on there. Aircraft will be departing from runway, no arrivals, runway 27 left. Aircraft will be departing from the 10,000 foot remaining board. Affirmative, sir. Sorry about that. A little bit of confusion. You shut your fucking mouth when I key up and talk. I'll bounce my fucking fist off the side of your head like a fucking machine gun going off. Copy 5-6, affirmative. You can back taxi there on runway 27 left from India back down to your wingman. If you're going to say something, you key up and fucking say it. If you don't want me to fucking talk, then key up and fucking say it. Start giving some fucking instructions. Copy 5-6, Roger, sir. He's accessing the runway at Lima. He's starting the back taxi right now. We'll get you Jim out of here in just a second. God fucking damn it, be an air traffic controller. Fix this bullshit when you see it fucking happening. I'm trying to write a motherfucking eval here. You want to be qualified in this bitch? Act like a fucking air traffic controller. Watch this bullshit happen. You come in here with your musty ass Iwakuni crawl and you want to get qualified in this bitch? Start acting like you want to be qualified. Fuck me, I can't take my eyes off of you for a fucking second. Give me a fucking break. Jesus fucking Christ and all his little angels. I'm trying to do some shit here. Copy 5-6 flight, gentlemen, right there in front of the C-130 line. We'll be fine. Once you make a 180 there from the intersection, you're clear for takeoff, runway 27 left. Play that motherfucker lane.
South Sir 1 Roger, runway 27 right, winds 280 at 8, clear to land, runway 27 right.
So
tell that motherfucker to land, he says.
Yeah, he goes, clear up, motherfucker, to land. So I did not catch that for years because I've edited this clip. So like some of the silence at the end, I shortened so that you can get to that end. Yeah. So for years, I never heard that part at the end. But what you've got is my buddy's fuming, right? Because he's been getting his ass handed to him in the tower. And he's no pushover. You know, he's about 5'2", raging Cajun, like gets in bar fights. Like he's not one to just sit down and take it, but he's in a situation where he just has to, right? And so after all that, what happens is Tusk 01 A10 checks in for just like a normal call, like a straight in approach to 27 left or whatever. And as if he needed to be told what to do, he goes, clear motherfucker to land. And that's when you hear my buddy go, Tusk 01, Alisal Tower, runway 27 left, clear to land. So for years, I didn't catch that last part, but I think that's a nice little cherry at the end.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Breathe in, breathe out, clear that motherfucker to land.
That's awesome.
So, you know, he got checked out and he was fine. Everything was good. But sometimes that's what you got to deal with, you know?
Right. That's outstanding. Well, we actually send out an ROE document, rules of engagement, to all our guests. So it helps them figure out what we're going to do, how we're going to do it, yada, yada, yada. And that's one of the paragraphs in there is we say, you know what? We're explicit. We're an adult show, but try not to say the fucking fucker was fucking fucked. But I think the company just violated that.
Yeah, probably
Put
so.
that motherfucker to land.
So sorry for all the F-bombs, folks, but, you know, it's explicit. So,
well, then there's that.
God, that is funny.
Yeah. Automated Terminal Information Service. Yeah. Thank you, Sticks.
Yeah. His badass put a comment in there. Samuel L. Jackson just showed up on the show.
Motherfucking Stakes on a motherfucking plane.
So, and that was a great movie. Wasn't a war movie, but it was The Man. And it was Eugene Levy and Samuel L. Jackson. And he's trying to get Samuel L. Jackson to stop swearing. He goes, so what you should say is, crying out loud. And he finally gets the guy to Samuel L. Jackson to say for crying out loud in front of his 10-year-old daughter in the show. But yeah. Oh man.
God bless America.
The Man. All right.
Hey, we've been going at this for 2 hours.
We have. We got a little ways to go. I think we turn it over to Dan from Danger Close here, Fig, and let this be some of his show too, because it is a joint show, and we've been
turn it over, turn that shit right over.
Dan,
how do we do it? Do we count down to 1, 2, 3?
No,
or
man,
yours?
I'm gonna cut it at about. So you're already into the second show. I can guarantee you, if you're listening to me speak right now, I'm going to cut it back about the hour and 15 to hour and 20 mark, somewhere in there. And we'll get it. We'll get it figured out. So
yeah, that sounds good. I'll save my last story for the post show stuff for your patrons, like we decided.
Let me tease that real quick. His last story is going to be. Dan was on duty in the San Francisco Tower the day the Asiana 777 crashed. I want to dig deep into that. That's fascinating, as deep as you can get in 10 or 15 minutes. But I want to know what happens at a major airport when a crash happens on the field. So we'll chat about that and see how all that works, because I imagine your pucker factor goes way up. You've got a lot to deal with. And so we'll go there when we get there.
Well, I know you guys want to land this plane before we talk about
Yeah.
some people who were not able to land a plane, unfortunately. So
Yeah, we should probably do that. Fig, let's do it from heart, man. What do you say? I think we need to get some thank yous out there. The first one and foremost is Dan. Thank you for your service to our country, to the Marine Corps. We're deeply appreciative of that. So
thank you both for yours.
yeah, thank you, and to all the veterans and active duty who serve, and their families who sacrifice so much to give us the freedoms that we have. We don't know you all, but we owe you all. I like that.
I like that term. I mean, I like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Got to thank Dave Hamilton, right, for giving us all the with the bandwidth and expertise and everything to get this thing out there.
Absolutely.
And I'm going to throw a thank you out to our guys behind the scenes there that are been hanging with us the whole time, Bago and Sticks. Thank you, gents.
Man, you guys make it happen. You make our lives so much easier by doing the background work you do for us, producing this show. It's deeply appreciated.
Yeah, and thank you to Sadie, who, if she hadn't reached out to our show, I wouldn't even have heard of you guys for who knows how much longer, and she made this connection happen. So
right. So yeah, so Sadie's over at Backbeat Media. She helps us put shows together and talk about each other. And so we've got a couple shows here, and hopefully you have at least a show or two out of this. If you're not too embarrassed to put us in your feed.
Absolutely not.
Yeah, we're just a couple knuckleheads.
Right. Exactly. So, but hey, you know what, Dan, how would someone get a hold of you if they had a question about your show?
Yeah. So, and I did want to offer, I'm not shy and I don't care if people want to reach out. If you have air traffic control questions, if you're flying through SFO and you want a tour of a control tower, I offer that to all my friends and acquaintances.
Oh, I'm in.
And it is something that I can do. If you guys are ever flying through there, I'm happy to take you up and show you the guts and show you how things work. It's a very behind the scenes job that most people don't know about. So if you have air traffic related aviation questions, I do teach classes from time to time to the local pilots, but my birth name, my Italian name is Daniele. Most people can't say it, so I just go by Dan because it's easier. But my personal email, which I don't have a problem putting out there, is DANIELE.ferlito, FERLITO @gmail.com. You can hit me up if you have air traffic questions or if you want to do a tour of the tower. And if you want to check out Danger Close, our website has all our episodes on it, regardless of what platform you're on. You can go to www.dangerclosepod.com. We got a solid 50 plus episodes on there, plus our Patreon feed where we'll do war related. It's called Danger Close Enough. So T1, T2, science fiction, Starship Troopers. I'm good friends with Paul Salmon, who worked on that movie. So we had him on as a guest. I had a great friend of mine, Daniele Borelli, who does History on Fire, which is another great history show. He's just below Dan Carlin in terms of popularity there.
Nice. Okay.
And he teaches Native American studies. And so he was our guest on the Last of the Mohicans episode to talk about some of the cultural stuff and all that. So he was great. But yeah, and you can find us on all your podcast platforms, Spotify, Apple, etc., under Danger Close. Jack Carr does have a Danger Close kind of veteran Navy SEAL related thing, but we're the only film review related one. And again, we cover war films, so you can find us on all the platforms.
Nice. All right. So, and if you have any questions for our show, it's either Fig @SoThereIWas.us, RePete @SoThereIWas.us, Sticks @SoThereIWas.us if you want a good answer, or Bago, BAGO @SoThereIWas.us. He'll also give you a good answer. RePete and Fig, we'll just blow you off, give you bullshit, but you write to them. If you heard a term that we did not explain, how would you find out what you wanted? Write to us or go where, Fig?
Go to sothereiwas.us/glossary.
That's right.
Absolutely. It's pretty good.
Absolutely. And if it's coming up on summer, and if you are watching the live stream, you see what we got right up there. Show logo on a nice bikini. How would you get yourself into one of those bikinis, Fig?
Well, you'd have to lose a little weight. No, that's not what you meant.
Yeah.
So there I was.us/merch.
There you go.
You can find the bikini. You can find tumblers, hoodies, whatever.
Absolutely. And we've had a couple new Patreons this week. I'm not going to name them right now. We'll name them in the intro preamble. So you've already heard it if you've gotten this far in the show. Thank you so much. We thank Sticks. We thank Bago. We got to thank Badass, BDSAviationPhotography.com for letting us use his fine aviation shots. Amazing artist with a camera, that guy is. BDSAviationPhotography.com. Thank you, Badass. And then
yes, thank you, Badass.
And I got like a little earwig. Sounds like I have this tune I can't get out of my head. Is that just me?
No, sir. No, that's music, and that's the 2 Air Force F-16 pilots that make the Air Force sound
those
good.
Guys.
That's those guys. Gringos.
Those guys. Yeah. Those gringos.
They put out 4 albums back in the day, and not a one of them has a bad song on it. I listen to them constantly because it makes me laugh.
Howlingly good fun. So that's it. Until next week, I guess, everybody. Stay safe and hold short of 2-8 left.
Hold short. Hold short.
Well, there I was, crossing the pond, and you could see that I wasn't exactly fond of all the shit I was wearing on that day. Now an F-16 is cramped enough, but it's even worse with all that stuff supposed to save your life. But we knew there was no way. 'Cause when you're going down the North Atlantic, man, it's over.
It's what?
He said it's over.
Was it over when the Germans bombed Pearl Harbor?
No! Hell no, it wasn't. And we are out.